What's up, guys? Real quick, before you get into the video, I just finished an over 2 hour long interview with Chris Lights Out Lytle. If you don't know who Chris Lytle is, or you don't understand why he was one of my favorite fighters, I need you to stop what you're doing, go and search up and look up the Dan Hardy versus Chris Lytle fight and the Matt Brown versus Chris Lytle fight. Watch those two fights and then come back over and finish the video. And yeah, it's pretty good, man. It's a pretty good video. He's a super nice guy, and I'm really honored not only to do my first interview, but for it to be with somebody who's one of my favorite fighters. So please check it out. And one more thing, don't forget to check out Chris Lytle's podcast, Lights Out Podcast. He goes over MMA history. He's got all kinds of fighters on there that are pioneers of the sport. It's a great podcast. Don't forget to check it out. Don't forget to check my show out, High Kick Fight Picks. We're both available on YouTube, Spotify, Pandora, Rumble, all your major streaming services. Thanks, guys. Check them out. What's up, everybody? I'm here with one of my favorite fighters of all time and one of the most exciting fighters to ever do it, Chris Lights Out Lytle. How you doing, man?
Man, fantastic. And I just want to tell you, you're obviously one of the smartest fans out there from what I'm hearing so far. Very intelligent, got a good eye for fighting. So I like where your head's at already. Let's go. Let's get this thing going.
All right, man. Well, you fought in Pancrase, WEC, UFC, BKFC, probably 100 other organizations that I don't that couldn't find or whatever. And I was just curious, what would your record actually look like if all of your fights were on it? Because I know there's a bunch of fights that aren't on your record, and I know Pancrase kind of screwed your record around a little bit with their weird stuff over there. And
Well, I know easily I probably had about 16, 18 more, maybe 20 more wins that are on my record. They used to be there at one point, but since they went back through and said, you fought in Indiana, these fights were on there, but Indiana, Ohio, whatever, like these weren't sanctioned states at the
yeah,
time. So if it has no sanctioned body, we're taking away all those wins. I couldn't care less. I fought. I wanted, like, they got my first fight, I think it was maybe in Japan. I was like, I wasn't 0-0 and went to Japan. I was like 10, 11-0. And then I came back and fought a bunch more around here,
yeah,
because they didn't have, it wasn't like anybody would sign you to an exclusive contract, UFC included. So it's just like you fought wherever you could because, hell, UFC back then put on 5 fights a year. Pancrase, I like going over there. They put on probably, 10 fights a year, but nobody put on a lot of fights. You had to fight all over the place. So I came back here, had a lot more fights, and not one of those is on my record. It's funny. Every one of those fights was a win. I never lost outside a major organization, but I'm like, can you take away a couple of losses? No, it's like, we're just going to take away all wins, man. So, yeah. But like I said, I don't really care about those. I don't really look at that. But, yeah, they got my record way off.
So for whatever that's not on there, or was it anything in Japan or?
No, everything, like all the big major stuff is on there, but like any regional type fight, none of those are on there. So it just, if it was a big legitimate organization, they, for some reason they considered them sanctioned. I don't know. Like in Japan, they were always sanctioned, even though I don't know there's a sanctioned body.
Yeah. Off like, or was it were you just in jiu-jitsu at a younger age, or how did you start out?
I heard saying he was going to a place, he called it shoot fighting. He's like, he was a friend of mine from wrestling. He's like, oh, I'm going to shoot fighting, and I started going over there, and I was just better wrestler than most of the people, and had a good. I transitioned well right from, wrestling to jiu-jitsu, and it wasn't really jiu-jitsu; it was more catch wrestling.
Yeah.
Because I had no gi. It was just no gi rolling a lot with more catch wrestling base, and immediately I'm a young guy, and I start going there, and I'm going against these 35-year-old guys with tattoos, and we're like ruffians, but I was like beating them because I was better at wrestling, kind of. So. And I adapted with them. These were big 250-pound guys, so I immediately fell in love with it because I was like, man, I'm good at this, and I still like a young kid in my eyes, and I'm beating these, thug adult men. So I kind of it really made me feel good about myself. I was like, I could be good at this. Went and watched one of the fights they put on, and immediately I was like, oh yeah, I'm gonna do this. And then once I had a fight, I was like, okay, I just want to keep going and getting better. And then I met Jason Gatsby, who was going to Japan all the time, and I was like, oh yeah, he's like, I'll get you in Japan. So then it was like that was my goal, just to make it over to Japan.
Were the I saw you fought with a company called Hook and Shoot. Was that in
Yep.
Japan or was that here?
Hook and Shoot was here, man. It was in Evansville, Indiana, about 3.5, 4 hours away. But they had connections with Shudo, and so they had like a Japanese connection. They had some fighters go over there, but I was no, I didn't fight. They're actually a big organization at the time, man. I mean, Hook and Shoot. There wasn't. It was UFC, King of the Cage, Hook and Shoot. Those were like the biggest in the country, really.
Yeah. Okay. So were you boxing? Was that before you had a 13-1 boxing record, right?
Yep, yep. A lot of people thought I was a boxer first, so I started boxing.
Before
Huh?
that, you'd already been fighting MMA way before that, right? You've been in
Yeah,
Japan.
yeah. I went to a boxing gym just to get better at stand up. It was funny. I went back and saw a fight. I think it was in 2000. I fought in Japan, and I was like, God, I was terrible on my feet. I didn't
Yeah.
realize how bad my stand up was. I mean, it was just I had no official training. It was just me roll and do jiu-jitsu, and we'd just stand up and start punching each other. I remember at one point, I don't know if you know a guy named Alex Stiebling, the Brazilian killer at the time. He was back, fought in Pride, beat
Yeah.
Alan Goe, this great fighter for a while. But I remember me and him just trying to train for fight. I had like a year of experience on him, and I got him involved when we started fighting. I remember at one point, like I'd had a pair of boxing gloves and he didn't. So I remember us saying like, okay, you'll get the right hand this round and I'll get the left hand. And we would just punch like that. And then the next round we changed. And just looking back, I'm like, that is beyond stupid.
That's
You're
funny.
not learning anything. You're learning bad techniques. You're punching with one hand. All we're doing is hitting each other as hard as we can and cracking each other and hurting, losing brains. So it was like, I was young. I didn't know any better. There was nobody. It was a blind leading the blind and nobody knew. So looking back, it was funny and stupid, but it was just a different world back then.
It's like that. Was that the first UFC where that guy came out wearing the one boxing glove?
Art Gymnick or something like that. He
Yeah.
had one glove. He didn't want to hurt his hands. I was like, I mean, just no, that was never our thought. We were just like, man, I'm going to box, but I don't have I don't have two gloves, so we'll make it work, And I mean, I can't imagine people would do that type of stuff nowadays, which they shouldn't. But it was just back then. I would start fighting in '98, in the like beginning of '98. The sport was like 4.5 years old.
Yeah.
The way I see it, UFC one was end of 1993, so it was a very new sport, and you're still
Yeah,
just
they were
out there
still
trying to
working
rub
it
two
out.
sticks together to make a fire.
Real quick, I forgot to mention your podcast. You do the Lights Out podcast. It's on Spotify, all kinds of stuff. And could you tell people about that real quick? I'm going to mention it every time I do a video from now on because I started listening and
Lights Out podcast is about like what I'm talking about, these old stories like that. Me and Alex are sitting there with one glove. I like it when I'll talk to fighters, a lot of guys who've been around for a long time, the guys who helped develop the sport, make this sport. We had Mark coming on, Polar Bear, just old school guys, Boss, just all these guys, and they tell the stories of how they got started and stories like that about. I remember just people telling where they went and they were going to fight, and it's called on the record. It's the Cold House fight. It's like Cold House fight. What's that mean? They're like, well, they went to put on a fight someplace in Wisconsin or something or Minnesota, and the place got canceled, so they found some abandoned house and fought in it.
yeah,
And like people were standing up against like the radiator, so people didn't get hurt, and it was on somebody's record. Dave Benet, that's like that would never happen now. You just go build some mats in an old abandoned house and people fought, and it goes on your record. It was like that's kind of the cool things that people don't know the history of the sport and where it came from. You're never going to hear that stuff if you don't hear it from the people who would actually. It'll just be like an urban myth or legend. People say, no, that's not true. No, we're going to have it, the story by the person who actually did it. So we have a lot of old stories like that, and I love it. So that's what we do about the podcast. We just try and hear people's story. How did you get, even like newer people, how did you get to the UFC? How did you get from A to B? And they're always interesting stories, man. I mean, some people remember Eric Anderson, like, well, I just started going to a gym, and only way I learned how to fight, the coach wasn't great, so I just fought, So he had like 23 amateur fights. I'm like, Jesus. He's like, that's how I learned to fight.
Yeah.
I just do an amateur event, and I'd learn, okay, don't do this. Like that's crazy. You learn on the job. So I just love hearing everybody's path to get there. I mean, I don't know. Everybody seems like they got a unique way, and I think the
Yeah.
old school stories are great, but some of the new ones are still good too.
Yeah, I'm hooked on it for sure, and I'm definitely going to mention it every time I do a video from now on because people need to hear that. And it's like I had no idea until a few weeks ago about it, until
Oh,
I
really?
because I went back after you actually messaged me back and were talking to me. I couldn't believe it. I went back and watched all your fights. And I was like googling all your stuff, and I was like, oh shit, he's got a podcast, So I've been
Yeah.
listening to it for a little while now, and I'm stuck on it. And anybody that's been watching, I mean since the 90s. I mean, those are all the people that I grew up watching and people I haven't thought of in forever, and it's really cool to hear them and hear their stories and because I know things were way different back then and it's
Oh man.
it's
Yeah.
crazy to hear, all their
Couple good
takes
ones.
and
I wanted to throw. Have you listened to the? You probably haven't heard of one. Ian Heinick yet?
no I haven't.
Dude, that's a wild one, man.
Yeah.
I mean that's one that had me just kind of listen for the first hour of him talking. It's just like kind of that's a
Yeah.
crazy one.
Yeah. I listened to
Uh,
both of yours. I listened to the Sam Stout one of the Sam Stout ones. I actually
yeah.
listened to them in the wrong order. I listened to the second one first. And then I listened to a Spencer Fisher one. Trying to think of what else I listened to. There are a couple more that I haven't finished yet, but those are the ones I listened
yeah.
to so far. But it's really entertaining and it's really cool to hear all that stuff. And I
Yeah.
do
No.
appreciate definitely what y'all are doing with that.
Another real old school guy, Oleg Tuktarov. We had him on there, and he had some crazy stories just about like him doing like mercenary work and stuff, and being like they went somewhere I can't remember somewhere in Africa, and like the people who brought him on the mission like didn't have enough money to pay the pilots to, and so they just like left him and didn't bring him back, and then like, otherwise with no supplies. It's like dude, you just got left in the middle of the desert. It's like it's some wild stuff. Yeah, that was done. Ian Heinick is probably one of the wildest stories I've had on there. So check those out. Those are good.
Yeah, I'll listen to that one next for sure.
Yeah,
Did you happen to watch Fedor's last fight last night?
man.
I could have
I
gone
did
without
not.
seeing that.
I did some commentary and some of the fights last night. I don't even know. I haven't heard what happened. What happened here?
I mean, Ryan Bader just wiped the floor with him, and I could have gone without seeing that. I don't like
Man,
I don't like all that stuff. I mean, I was gonna get with all that stuff with you later towards the end of the interview anyway, but yeah,
well, I'll hold out till then to talk about it. So
yeah, yeah, because there's a lot to talk about there. I'm
yeah,
yeah, definitely. But so if you could, would you explain, what pancrase is? Because a lot of people
yeah.
might not know, and the rules, and tell us some stuff about what it was like over there, and maybe some stories if you got any from Japan or
Sure. Man, now Pancrase back in the day, it was you had MMA, but it wasn't called MMA back then. It was called NHB, no holds barred. You could kind of do whatever. Back then, you could headbutt, you could knee a guy in the head on the ground, kick him in the face on the ground. Really, was very little rules. Pretty brutal. If you watch like especially first few UFCs, I mean that second and third one, those were brutal. I
yeah,
mean people were getting wrecked. It was sometimes hard to watch. Oh my God, he's dead. Um, I love it still. Like I like the less rules, the better. Personally, if let's say you are allowed to knee a guy in the head on the ground, well, I know that knee's coming. So if you got me in position, I don't just sit there and take it. I have to roll and move, and machines and more for creative flow. It's less stagnant where you just sit there. So I mean, I understand if I'm going to defend myself, I'm not going to sit there and let you knee me. So I think it adds to, but the Pancrase philosophy, I think, was they really understand the sports of mixed martial arts is what it's became, and so they really appreciated, I think, the submission aspect of it. So um, they had open-handed strikes to the head on the ground and on the feet. I mean, you couldn't punch a guy with because it was barehanded, so you had to slap a guy with you get him with the palm, which could hurt. But it was more designed to create the flow to open up submissions. It wasn't a grappling match because you just had people sit there. You could hit them then and make them move. You had wore these big like shin pad type boot things where you could kick. You could kick. You could knee the head. You could do whatever you wanted. You could hit, but it had to be open hand out of the body. You could punch with a closed fist. But it really was designed for the art of the submission, where you could continue to force a guy open and then go for the submissions. But similar to what they're guys, they fought a lot. And they fought tough competition. They fought each other all the time. All the guys from the Pancrase kind of had bad records. I mean, if you were really good, your record might. I mean, you fought 14 tough guys. Like it
Yeah.
wasn't like you
Well,
fought
they fought like
easy
really
guys every
often, right?
they fought all the time.
Yeah.
Maybe
So
sometimes every month. Some I went there and stayed and trained, and it was just it was train twice a day, 6 days a week. It was tough, man, and I loved it, man. You got to go there and just really work really hard, and it was a really only time I really understood. Oh, this is how you're supposed to train to be a real fighter.
yeah. Well, did they? I know I heard you saying that they gave you per diem and stuff out there. Was the pay a little bit better out there than it was fighting over here?
Well,
I know they treated the fighters more like athletes there than they did over here at the time. So
when I show up at the airport, there'd be somebody with a little sign, Mr. Lytle, and I'd walk up and they'd give you a per diem right there, and then they'd take you to your hotel, and it was like everything was on an itinerary, and they'd get you there like 4 days in advance so you could acclimate. They'd take you to press conferences. We didn't get any of that stuff around
yeah,
here. I mean, I remember my first time I fought in the UFC in 2000. I showed up the day before, no press conference. Weigh-ins were the day of the fight, and they said, "Oh, Chris, we have a problem. You were supposed to have an eye test done by an ophthalmologist, and it was an ophthalmologist." I'm like, "What's the difference? One letter? I didn't have the H in there." And like, "Yeah, you have to go get your eyes dilated right now." And
the day of
so I
the
didn't get
fight.
my eyes dilated the day of the fight. And it was like no press conference. It was just a different world. And then 2 round and like I don't even think they gave you per diem. They gave us like a pass. You could go eat at the cafeteria in the staff anytime you wanted. So it was like this. Japan was way more organized. They treat you better. They had little baseball cards. If I'd show up there after a while with my picture on it, and kids would have me sign up. So I just love going to Japan. I think I probably got paid about 2.5 to 3 times more to go to Japan. That was right. That was with the ESG or SEG owned UFC right before Dana White and them got involved. So then things changed when Dana White and them got involved. But before that, I was like, man, this UFC is not gonna make it. I didn't think it was a
Yeah,
good organization when I first went.
yeah, for sure. Um, I found a couple of your Pancrase fights. They're kind of hard to find. There's a couple of them on YouTube. I don't know where I
Yeah,
can find the rest. Was that you actually had hair in a couple of them, man? It was weird seeing you with hair because the entire time I've watched you fight, you never had hair the whole time until I watched those.
yeah. I don't know what fight were on there. I know the one
It was
probably
the one where
Minowa was on there at one point.
the guy that y'all were kind of tied up on the ground with your legs wrapped up around each other, and he started headbutting you, and I think
Minowa.
it wound up being a draw, right? I think.
Yeah, that was when they were trying to transition over to MMA. So that was where you could headbutt, you could kick to the head on the ground, you could do whatever. So if it was one 15-minute round, and if it went the distance, it was a draw. So
Yeah.
that's I mean I thought I'd
It was pretty
draw.
crazy how they did that. Any sense of how the rules were or what why
Yeah,
because there was fights that, like you were clearly dominating. I'm getting ahead of myself, but um, clearly dominating the fight, and then they either call it a draw or say you lost, and I just couldn't figure out the rules or I guess you probably didn't even know either. So
I remember a couple of times they were getting so frustrated. I was like, man, I mean, the hometown decisions killing me, man. And I had a couple of. I remember like the first time I lost a majority decision. I lost a couple of those, and I had a couple of draws. And I remember they called me like a month later. I was like, yeah, I'll come back. What are you gonna do? And back then, I remember I lied to him because at first there was no weight classes there, so I lied and told him I weighed like 190 pounds on it, weighed like 175, just so they'd let me over. And I know I showed up and they were looking. I was like, yeah, man, I've been sick. I can't remember what I said, but I was like, remember one point, it was just I wanted to be over there, and they wouldn't have allowed me because there was no weight class. So I mean, it was tough not being a smaller guy and then having close fights. I wasn't winning on the judges' cards, and really kind of started screwing up my record. But I didn't care. I love all those guys over there had those kind of records because it was just it's nothing but tough competition, man. It was tough guys, and they trained hard, and they were a step ahead of us, and me at least in that time.
yeah. So you said in one of your interviews, like, did y'all stay like for lack of a better word, like in like a compound type thing over there and train, or was it like they gave you
Oh,
hotel
I stayed at
rooms,
the
or
gym. I
it was
mean,
a
it
gym?
was like it was a gym, and then they had these like little trailers, yeah, a couple of them in there. So like I got to go in my little place, had a little bit of air conditioning, but I mean, you just lived in the gym the whole time, and It was weird. It was the middle of nowhere. If I remember, this is before cell phones. I mean, it was 1999. I remember I go there, and then some of the guys were starting to get cell phones. I remember thinking, man, these guys, thought they were just with their Japanese technology. Everybody's getting these cell phones, but I didn't have one. So I remember if I wanted to use a phone, I have to go get on a bike, little bike with like a basket on a little bell in the front, and I have to ride it like 20 minutes to get to like the train station, and I could get on buy a little card and call home,
Yeah.
call like my girlfriend and stuff, and be like, tell what was up.
Yeah.
It was rough.
So at that time in Japan, there was what was there Shudo and Pancrase, or was it?
Shudo and Pancrase were kind of like bumping it. Pancrase I felt was a little bit better than Pancrase, but then that was just, I think they were on like Pride #6. So Pride had been
So
just
Pride
becoming a
wasn't
thing
really
too.
around yet then, or was
It
it?
was just starting off. So like it hadn't blown up yet, but it was a big thing. It was like they were, you could tell the production value was huge with that. And you could just, I didn't really understand it, but then looking back, you could tell there was like Yakuza money in there
Yeah.
because it didn't make any sense for how like to be spending that kind of money on it when like Pancrase had a stable of fighters, they had a fan base, they had they were building an organization the right way, and Pride just jumped in and threw a bunch of money at it. So like, where'd that money come from? So looking back, it makes sense. But I mean, so I think people knew Pride was there, and like I don't know if they knew it was going to stay yet, but then it was starting to take off right when I was there.
Are you surprised you never wound up fighting in Pride at all while you were over there, or?
Well, a couple things. No, because first of all, their guys, they were all pretty damn huge, at the time. Most of those guys, it was 240-pound
Yeah.
guys. It was like, man, I was 175, maybe 180. So the guys were big there, but not just that. I mean, I never really thought about fighting Pride or Shooter because the thing I learned they have a different philosophy, and it's not just we go fight for whoever you want. There's like a loyalty and a respect and an honor system. And I'm like, if you went over to another one, you'd probably be looked at as like, man, that's not how we do things. If you're with us, you're with us. And they will. There's a lot of pride and honor about sticking. Like your job is to help that company. It's not. It's not all about me, and you're going to go to whichever the highest bidder. They will not like you as a fighter, and they won't respect you. I don't think if you went that route. And so there's not a lot of opening and transition for a long time. It kind of happened at the end when like Men of One, a couple of those people started going to other organizations, but that's when like I think the financial problems started developing and people weren't able to pay as much, and it kind of changed. But at the beginning, I was like, nah, I kind of bought it into the Japanese system of like the honor, respect, and loyalty. Man, you wouldn't go just over to Shooter. That'd be a slap in the people's face who've been bringing you over forever.
Was Boss written over there when you were there, or did he come after you were there? And he was in
No, he was
Pancrase, right?
before. He was before I was there. He was kind of wrapping up and starting to do more. Like I think he just came over to the UFC, but I met him over there probably in '90 because he was a big deal over there.
Yeah. Have you
He's
had
a
him?
funny guy, man. He's a wild man.
Have you had him on your podcast
Yeah,
yet? Okay,
yeah.
cool. I have to check that out. Um, sorry, I got my notes on my phone, so don't think I'm being rude if I'm looking
No,
down.
no, no. Boss was an amazing. You have to listen. It's amazing. Listen to how, like being over in Holland, they didn't have great grappling, especially back then. He's like basically teaching himself, getting books and looking on things and getting caught in moves, and then like going and working on. Like, okay, I'm never getting caught in that again. It's pretty amazing how he's been able to train his brain
Yeah,
just to like sit down and figure it out. I mean, but you got to understand. I remember I never had any kind of real. I've never done. People always used to say I was a black belt in jiu-jitsu. Like I've never done jiu-jitsu. I've never owned a gi. Like we would just literally sit there and like talk with each other. We have about 10 people in there, and we're like, okay, how do you get out of the mountain? We'd all go split up. We'd all roll, and we'd come back and talk and be like, well, this is what I do, and then somebody else said this is what I do, and everybody kind of try what works for them and make up your own system for each person. It wasn't. It was like trial by fire and just learning, not somebody was a.
you didn't have any Brazilian jiu-jitsu, before you went over there at all. Had you trained that at all before you went over to Japan, or did you pick up there and Brazilian jiu-jitsu? I mean, I've heard people say it's different. I wouldn't know
That was
because
purely like more of a catch wrestling style that I talked about. We'd go and just everybody do grapple together, and we'd say, okay, I'm not doing this well. What do we do? And we all kind of try and figure it out. And then what works for me may not work for you. 300-pound guy. Well, now my moves aren't going, and his moves are different. So it's just kind of figuring out what works for you, and just figuring out your own style based on your body type and what works for you. You know, your strength factors, all that stuff. I think it's a great way to do it because I learned how
Yeah.
I move best and what works for me, and what they're going to do. They're going to move. They don't know what I'm going to do because they've never went against somebody like me. So I kind of like that system that we just kind of, it was unintentional. It was just out of necessity. We had to make up your own style for your own person.
Yeah. Well, you definitely figured it out because
Thank you.
you got a lot of good submissions on your record, and you got a move that I'm going to talk about a little bit later that I mean, I just thought it was the coolest thing I ever seen, but I'll talk about that once we get
Okay.
into the UFC. But so I heard you say at one point that times in like I want to say a month, or was it?
Yeah.
So isn't that crazy? Because nowadays, like people are, they're especially even the champions are lucky to fight twice a year. Now I mean, and you were
Yeah.
fighting 5 times a month back then.
Was one of those fight. I mean, three of those fights were in one night. It was an 8-man tournament.
Yeah, I was gonna
You know what
ask
I
you
mean?
about
So
that.
8-man tournament. But you got to understand the people who I was fighting. Like I had already been in Japan. I was fighting at that high level, trained with those guys. Most of the people around here were, train a couple days a week. So it wasn't the highest level of competition. But and then I started. Now I think at that point I can't remember if that was when I was already started doing pro boxing. That counted as one or two of them. And I did learn though. At that point I was just fighting anytime I could because I loved it, and you were going to pay me. I loved it. It wasn't for a little bit that I started learning, man. Like my only boxing match that I lost, boxing match, and the boxing match, probably all within 5 to 6 weeks. And so I like by the end of that last boxing match, it was a tough fight, and I just didn't have. I mean, I didn't have that second gear to kick into, and I like every round, my first round here, my hands, second round because I was flat. You know what I mean? So I
Yeah,
just like I can't sit here and say right now to beat the guy if I hadn't done it a different way, but I don't think I give myself a good chance of winning because I learned after that you have to like nowadays if you want to fight you have to set up like a 6, 8 week camp, whatever it is. You have to peak at the end. You have
yeah,
to set up like every week you peak here and then you fall. Well, I was just like every couple of weeks I was fighting. You can't peak, so your body needs a rest. It needs to recover. It needs to be at the optimal time to perform. And I wasn't doing that back in the day. I would just fight, like I said, 5 times a month if I could, 3 times in a month. Just whenever people give me an opportunity, I'm like, yeah, I'll do that fight. Yeah, I'll do that fight. I never said no, which was I like that mentality because that's how you should be. But you shouldn't do it.
yeah,
That should be as a fighter. That should always be your mentality, and you should have management who never let that happen. I mean, you should have a trainer and a manager who says, "Yeah, I like your attitude." I mean, I remember later my boxing coach wouldn't even tell me about certain fights because he knew I'd say yes. My boxing coach said, "Yeah, they offered us to fight Andre Ward." I was like, "Why didn't we take it?" He's like, "You'd have lost." I was like, "No, I wouldn't." Yeah, you'd have lost. I was like, "Oh, all right." So I mean, they knew not to tell me about the fight because I would want it. As
yeah,
a fighter, you should want every fight, and it's up to management to tell you no. And back then, I didn't have any management, so I took every fight, and it was stupid, but I love doing it that way.
yeah. So were the boxing matches were you able to make more money doing that at the time than you were with your MMA fights, or was it about the same? Or
Man, people think boxing pays so much. Boxing's terrible, man. Boxing doesn't pay anything. I mean, boxing pays at the high end, at the highest level. It pays great.
yeah,
That's about it. I mean, now if you're being brought in to lose, if you're being brought in, if you got a decent record, they're bringing you over to fight like a guy in Germany or something. I don't know, but you might get paid 20 grand. I don't know, but I mean,
yeah,
boxers don't make the money they think. I mean, if you find like Floyd Mayweather's card, and he's making obviously great money. Maybe the co-main making $1,500.
yeah,
So I don't want to. Everybody thinks boxers make
yeah,
all the money. Yeah, at the highest level, boxers make a lot. Everybody else makes nothing. So it's different when you do MMA. It's like the high end doesn't get as high, but the middle is much better. A lot
yeah,
more people can make it if you're fighting UFC than you can just I mean, you might not be rich, but you're going to be able to make a living. That's not the same with boxing.
yeah, definitely. So is that 8-man tournament that you were just talking about? Was that the one where I think there was a lot of like UFC guys in it, and I think you fought Dave Manet?
No, that was a different tournament.
That was a
That was a
different one.
different tournament. Yeah.
Okay. So
That was a tough tournament. Yeah.
so you
Yeah, it was a
competed in
Monty Cox tournament.
some of these 4 times a night.
That was, I said, that I remember that one. I Dave Benet in it. I know Matt Hughes was in it. Laverne Clark, Dave Strasser. Can't remember who else, but it's like, dude, it was just a. I drew Dave Benet first round, and I was lost. And then I thought at one point, Monty said, "Man, I don't think he can fight the next round. Will you fight Laverne Clark?" I was like, "Absolutely." And then later on, he came back and said, "Well, Dave was going to do the fight." And Dave ended up fighting and winning. And then he said he couldn't fight after that, because I mean, his fight with me went, 10 minutes, and then Laverne Clark's first fight was like 18 seconds. He had a fresh Laverne Clark, and you had a very tired Dave Benet who almost didn't fight. And
Won a championship with the UFC, or was that?
yeah, that was before his
Okay.
UFC title. Yeah.
Yeah, I didn't remember. It's been so long, but so who else talking about whenever you were going to the weigh-ins there that all the Matt Hughes and all those guys were walking out and you were saying
Yeah, everybody
they
was
look
really big
kind
when I
of they
walked
looked a
in.
little bit
Yeah.
big.
Yeah, everybody looked pretty big there. I was like, damn, they're like, oh no, they made weight. I'm like, oh, all right, what do I know? Sure, okay, they made weight. I guess they made weight. I don't even remember what the weight class was. I thought it was 170, but who knows? I was done back then. Like I said, I'd fight in Japan with no weight class, so I just thought I'll fight anybody, man. Yeah, that's the difference. I think nowadays, a lot of the fighters are smarter, but I mean, man, we just fought. You just fought because you wanted to fight.
Yeah.
I mean, I don't think you have is that much anymore. Now people fought. I want to make a career. I want paid. I want this and that. But back then it was just like, man, I just want to get in there and fight. And I think there's something to be said for that. And a lot of the fighters back then, there was no phonies out there. I mean, if you were fighting, you were a phony. It didn't make sense because you weren't getting paid well, and it just didn't make sense. So people fought because they enjoyed it.
Yeah. So whenever you were fighting in Pancrase, like were people in the States able to see, like, was that on a channel, or no, it was just Japan?
Man, I would they'd send it to me like a couple weeks later, and I'd take it and I'd show it to people. But I mean, yeah, there was nobody knew what Pancrase was. There was no way, no pay-per-view that I knew of, nothing like that. And you wait for that VHS tape and you'd watch it. So it's hilarious.
Well, that makes sense then, that it would be kind of hard for the to get into the UFC, because they had no idea.
Well, no. The UFC knew all about Japan. I mean, it came from there. Guy Metzler, Boss Root. I mean, a lot of their champs, a lot of their, the Shamrocks, I mean, a lot of their talent came from Pancrase. They knew exactly what it was. They followed it. But I mean, he paid attention. I mean, you could look on, the internet and see the results and stuff. But
yeah. What's your, like, Joe Rogan thinks that there should be more weight classes, and or do you agree with it, or do you think it shouldn't be that,
I mean, like, I never cut that much, to be honest with you. I mean, I was probably the lightest 170 pounder out there. And to be honest, like, if I was walking around, I'd probably be about 190. And then, like, when I had a fight camp, a 6-week camp, I'd probably, if I'm working hard, eating well, not drinking any alcohol, like I never would. For 6 weeks, I'd just be good and eat clean. I'd probably get down to about 183, 182. And then, the week I'd leave for the fight, all I have to do is lose about 10, 12 pounds. That's easy. That's nothing. I mean, there's a lot of those guys who'd be walking around over 200, so they're doing a different kind of weight cut. But I think a small weight cut is not bad. 30, 40 pounds, like, man, it's not good for your body, dude. It's not good for you at all, I don't think. And, yeah, I mean, I don't know how many more weight classes I would like to see, but to me, 15 pounds is a pretty big jump.
Yeah.
Going from 170 to 185. I think maybe 185, 165. That'd probably be a smart idea.
Especially
to me, it's up to individual, man. If they want to kill themselves, I don't think it helps that much. I mean, you see a lot of these fighters, when they go up, they do better. Look at Anthony Rumble Johnson. He cut down to 170. He did well, but not elite. And then all of a sudden he goes up to 205 and he's murdering everybody. You know what I mean? So it's like some guys, I think you're seeing a lot more of that where people are deciding, look at when you cut down weight. I mean, those guys are faster, more athletic. The best fighters really who can do, they can do all kinds. Look at Demetrius Johnson. He can take people. I mean, 135 pounders phenomenal. I mean, the higher you get, the worse the fighters get. Now, I think about 170, 155, you kind of max out where you get speed and power and agility. But I mean, 85 people kind of slow down. I mean, I'm sorry. I think heavyweights, uh, they don't have the most skill. I mean, the heavier you are, I think the less technically sound you have to be, in my opinion. I mean, think about it. Heavyweights are you who's really good at like submission and stand up. Usually they're like a knockout guy or they're great on the ground. They're not both. Everybody at the lower weights is good at both. You have to be. You know what I mean? So the higher you get, I think the worse, less technically sound you have to be. So to me, people wanting to cut down, you're dealing with tougher people. You're dealing with a tougher realm of skill set you have to deal with. You better use that strength advantage because that's all you have by if you cut down weight class. So I don't think people should be cutting that much. I like the way they do it in one where like, yeah, you can't cut that much.
Yeah.
And that makes a lot more sense to me.
Yeah, one's actually pretty awesome. I love the Muay Thai fights that they have. I don't know if you watch those. Those guys are like really high level strikers. I mean, they're
Yeah, I
good.
mean, dude, they got a fun concept going. I mean, they do the grab, and
Yeah,
I know even like I talked about, the opens things up to me and makes you move and do things differently.
yeah, yeah. I really like what one does and how they do all their stuff. It sucks that I know that they're kind of like the UFC was originally, where they're like in a lot of debt and everything. But I really do like what they do. How they're giving like all these Muay Thai guys, a good platform and putting them
Yeah,
out there. It's pretty cool.
yeah,
Um,
it's real cool.
so after one of those, I think it was after the Dave Monet 8-man tournament. Was that when you fought Nick Diaz? I might
I
be,
know it was sometime after that. I can't
yeah,
remember.
I might
I
be
think it
skipping
was
over some.
it was Nick Diaz.
Was that his debut, or he
No, he
fought?
had a couple fights before that.
Okay,
He had a few fights, but he wasn't. That's the reason, like I've talked about it before, when I was like, I thought about quitting the sport because I mean, like, I was over on the fire department. I had 4 kids. I was busy doing a lot of stuff, and I go out to California for some fight. I think I was supposed to fight Jake Shields, and they were like, man, he got staph infection, he can't fight. And then they're like, we got a different guy, a real good up and coming guy named Nick Diaz. He won Grappler's Quest, he won all this stuff. I'm like, all right, whatever. And I remember thinking, I'm gonna kill this. I haven't had many fights. I'm gonna smoke him. I've already fought in the UFC. I've been fighting in Japan. I'm gonna kill this young kid.
yeah,
And I lost a split decision. I was just like sitting there. I remember talking to my buddy Alex Stevens again. I was just like, dude, what am I doing here, man? If I'm losing to these new guys nowadays, I mean, is the sport passing me already? Am I just not as good as I thought I was? And I remember it's just like, it after a while, I got over that and I continued to fight. But then I was glad to see about a year later, Nick in the UFC starting to beat people.
yeah,
You're like, okay, he's really good. It wasn't just I got beat by some nobody. I got beat by a great guy. He just wasn't. Nobody knew he was great yet. You know what I
yeah,
mean? But at the time, I didn't know that he could have been the nobody who just beat me. And I was like, man, I'm not. I don't want to be here just to be an opponent. Like if I'm going to fight, I want to go out here beating people, being the best, trying to be the best in the world. If I'm getting beat by nobody, I don't want to do it. But I didn't get beat by nobody. I just thought I did at the time.
yeah. Um, so you
I
were
don't know if
fight?
you were able to find that fight, but that was a pretty fun one.
No, I wasn't able to find it. I was looking for it. I don't know where to find that out. A lot of your
I
stuff.
had it
Wasn't
somewhere.
that
I know
fight like
somebody sent it
outside?
to me once. Huh?
Wasn't that fight like outside or like in the middle
Oh,
of
dude,
the desert
it
or
was brutal,
something?
man. It was. I remember it was out. Yeah, it was outside. Luckily, it was like by the time I fought, it was dark out. But I remember when the fight started, the sun was just going down, and so I didn't get the full part of the heat, but it was burning up. I mean, it had to be over 100 degrees, man. I remember in the last round, I was done. I was gassed. And I remember, you ever watch me fight, I don't take anybody down. I took him down, and I'm just holding him down, trying to do a little action so they don't stand us up. In my corner, Alex once again is yelling, stand him up, ref, stand him up. And I'm like, no, no. They stood us up, and 2 minutes left, and Nick landed a punch and cut me, and I pretty much pulled guard and just sit there until the round's over, and he won a split decision. So I remember afterwards, I was like, Alex, why did you tell them to stand me up? And he's like, man, you were wet on your feet. And I was like, man, yeah, but I was dead. I had nothing left. I was just trying to hold him down. I was like, I don't take people down. So he's like, my bad, but it was hot.
So, did you talk to Nick at all after that? I
Yeah,
mean, was he pretty
yeah, no,
cool?
he was good, man. I talked to Nick. I remember I talked with Nate too. Nate was, he was his younger brother there. He came and hung out and talked with us quite a bit. But I was bummed, man. It was just it sucked. I just thought, I'm a UFC veteran just getting beat by some 21-year-old kid from California, man. I was just like, what the a backup guy wasn't even supposed to fight me. I was like, what the hell. So
Oh,
it was a rough day for me.
was that after your first fight in the UFC? I thought it was before.
It was no, it was in like that was probably in 2002. My first fight in the UFC was in 2000, but it
Okay.
hadn't. It was that was with SEG. It wasn't when I came back and fought for Zuffa. It
Yeah.
was before my first fight with Zuffa. Yes.
Yeah. So I skipped over myself there, I guess. I thought that was before your first UFC fight. Um,
No.
so your first UFC fight was UFC 28,
Yeah.
and it was against Ben Earwood or
Yep.
something like that. Um,
Yeah. Militant's guy.
how'd that
Wrestler.
go, and what was it like? Your first fight in the UFC. What was the pay any good? Was it? I know you
Oh,
said you
horrible
weren't
pay,
happy with
man.
it,
It was
but
embarrassing. It was embarrassingly low pay. It was nothing. But it was it was weird because it was only a 2 round fight, and like my thing was I was always in good shape and I was wanting to go out there and wear them out. But I mean, it was really weird because I remember, you know, us and like the militant squad were both from like the Midwest, so we kind of had like this disdain for each other, because we're like, man, we want to we all want to be the best in the area, you know what I mean? And they were obviously had some great fighters, the Hugheses and Tim Silva, just a lot of good fighters. And so I thought, he was one of their guys, and I remember it was weird when the fight first started. He kind of just walked over and didn't come out to the middle of the ring. He kind of went over right by the fence, just kind of wait by the fence. And like, okay, so I went over to try. Like, I was always wanting to go for the finish, and all he would try to do just take me down and hold me. And I remember like, it's just like, dude, this is boring. What's going on here? Just let's fight. And 2 rounds to try and take me down and hold me down. I was just like, man, this is. I didn't like the way that went, and so lost the decision based on just guy just kind of tried to out wrestle me, and I was like, oh,
I didn't
was really
realize that.
unhappy with that. Didn't like my performance. Didn't like really the way the UFC was at the time. And I was like, man, I'd rather go over to Japan and fight where they actually, fight more. You know what I mean? It wasn't like I said. I like a lot about Pride. Like it's not this 10-point must system, which makes sense in boxing. If you got 12 rounds, 10-point must make sense. In MMA, I think it makes no sense. You got 3 rounds. What if I dominate one round a lot of times and kind of beat you up, and you have two close rounds that they give you? I lost the fight. Well, I disagree. So to me, I don't like even anybody's style. They just goes to go out there and hold you down or try and just out jab you or anything. It's all about whoever's doing the most damage, whoever's trying to push forward, hurt the other person more. Usually they're winning. It's always been my thought with MMA too. I want action. I want whoever's. The way I look at it is like this: like, let's say this was not a fight in a cage. There's no referee. This is just a fight for life or death. At the end of the fight, who's gonna win? Well, I've never I've never been choked out. I've never had to tap on those things or been knocked out. So my thought, I'm like, I'd win every fight. I mean, I look at and if your goal is just to hold me down, I don't think you're winning the fight. So that's how I felt like that fight went. And I was like, I understood that that's a rule set. And so I was kind of mad at myself for not being smart about trying to do something different. But it was just, I don't know, not a good performance.
Yeah. So I didn't realize that it was only a 2 round fight. That was still when the UFC was kind of trying to figure things out still, and
UFC
or
28, man, it was 2000. Yeah, it was weird. It wasn't yeah, it was a 2 round fight. So I didn't have, a lot of them were like 2 round fights. It didn't make any sense. Like, I don't know. If it was a draw, they would have went to a third round. They said, I was like, what the hell? And I mean, I don't even know how many rounds I'm going.
how long were the rounds? Was it 5 minutes or was it less? Or
I think it was 5 minutes. Yeah,
okay,
but I mean, it was just different.
yeah, that's another one I didn't get to watch the other day. Um, so that was your UFC debut, but your UFC debut might as well have been the Robbie Lawler fight because that's where
Yeah.
everybody started to know who you were, and it was a pretty good fight. And you want to talk about that for a little bit, and
Well, yeah, because after that, I went back over to Japan and started fighting, and then immediately when I saw Zuffa and Dana White and them got involved, I remember one of my buddies like, man, have you seen the UFC? These new guys got bought it, and they put a lot of money, and they're making it pretty good again. I was like, really? So went and started watching them fights. I've been thinking, man, I like this. You know what I mean? This is good. They're turning around because I was not excited after the first time when SEG or Yeah, owned it. And so then I started watching, and I was like, man, I want to get back in here. But the problem is they put on 5 or 6 fights a year, and they already had a roster. It's hard to get in. You can't just be like, I went in. They tell you so okay. Watching people like Robbie Lawler fight, and I'm like, I kind of want to get in here and fight some of these guys so it's getting good again. And I was fighting in Japan a lot. I had to start fighting anybody I could in the Midwest scene and just try and go continue to rack up wins until they give me a shot. And got to keep clear. Eventually, they gave me the call and said I could fight Robbie Lawler. I think what it was, really helped me then was I did some pro boxing, and so at that point I'd had, I don't know, 8 or 9, 10 pro boxing matches, and so a lot of these people just thought, hey, we got this pro boxer who wants to knock this guy out real quick, and it'll be good because it'll give him more credentials as knocking out a legitimate pro boxer. It's like, cool, you can think I'm a pro boxer all you want. I mean, I am a pro boxer, but that's not my forte, but whatever. As long as you get me in there, let's do it.
So, you're pretty fortunate, like as far as for that time period, like the pretty good, MMA scene and a lot. Because I know down in Texas around that time period, I mean, there was nowhere that anybody could fight. There was no organizations in this area. There weren't a whole lot of gyms anywhere. You know, there's a pretty good scene up there in Indiana, right?
Oh, yeah. Big Eve Edwards back then, I know when he Hook and Shoot kind of went down there and put on a fight or something. And that's when he fought fought for Hook and Shoot a little bit, did some good things there. It was just a harder time to get fights for a lot of places times. And thing I've learned is like it's really tough if you don't have a place that's kind of setting up fights for you. Like a place like Hook and Shoot, like they didn't care. Like they just want to put on good fights. They weren't trying to build anybody up. They just gave you the opportunity, and whoever came and fought, whoever won, then they say, okay, this is a good guy. We'll try and get him at the next level. So that's why it kind of, like I said, I remember I think Eve Edwards was able to go down and put on a great show against Aaron Riley, and Aaron Riley had fought Robbie Lawler in the UFC and made a great name for himself for like an iron chin. So it just kind of really, helped legitimize certain people. But I mean, it was just there wasn't as like there was a small group of people who you knew who were fighting, and that made it a lot easier because, like I said, on the UFC roster, they'll put 5, 6 fights on a year, so you knew all the fighters. It made a lot of fun.
Yeah, and Eve Edwards was really good. I really
great.
And you destroyed Aaron Riley. And what organization was that with when you fought Aaron Riley? That's who that was. Okay.
Yeah, it's weird because that was pretty much like his backyard.
Yeah.
I was brought in, but I don't think it was to win.
Yeah. Is that when your sister-in-law got into it with?
A little bit, yeah. Like I said, I was brought in. I guess I'm not saying I was brought in to lose at all, but I was brought in, and like I said, he definitely had pretty much everybody in the stadiums cheering for him, except for my wife, my sister-in-law, my in-law. It was like four fans for me. And afterwards, apparently, it didn't go real well for them. There's a little bit of a ruckus, but
Well, is it crazy to you that guys like Robbie Lawler are still fighting? And I mean,
I knew he was a lot younger than me back then. He's, I don't know, 7 years. I don't know. He was a lot younger than me, but yeah, I mean, to me, I don't like it. And the only reason I don't like it is I feel like boxing is probably the most dangerous sport. And by that, I mean, from a brain damage standpoint, you take so many shots in the head. However, MMA closely behind that, and it's not, I don't care if you, but just taking those shots for that long. All the fighters, all my favorite boxers ended up talking funny, having some kind of brain damage. I mean, all of them. So
yeah,
at some point that's going to happen to all fighters if you keep fighting. I don't care. There's just no way to avoid it. So that was one of my thoughts always, and why I kind of wanted to stop early was I didn't want, that's not going to happen. I can't have that. I remember when my second pro boxing fight was in Memphis, Tennessee, and I went, and the guy checking us in, he said something. I said, "What?" the hell was he talking? I was kind of nervous. Like, I don't know if I want to box anymore. And he's like, man, trust me. He's like, I'm not gonna let that happen to you. I'm like, how's that? And he's like, well, I'm only letting you have 5 wars. After your 5th war, I don't care what's going on in your career, we're done. If you go out there and knock somebody out in the first round, second round, third, that's fine. But if you have a fight, back and forth fight, we're not doing a bunch of those because you're not going to end up like that. I was like, all right, cool. So I think I ended up with like 2 boxing wars that I fought, and then I had signed my last UFC contract, or my first one. I couldn't box anymore. It's what led to early retirement for boxing. But that's I just can't see that as an option to go down that path, and you don't know until it's too late that you've went down that path.
Yeah.
So it's important to be around people who understand that, and and you trust, and they don't let you go down. But every boxer thinks they have another one left in them. Every fighter thinks they have another one left in them, and I don't want to see Robbie all messed up at the end of his life, or hell, not the end of his life, for the next 40 years, be all messed up and talking funny. And I just don't like that, man. I hope that doesn't happen to him. Hope he's been smart, and he got to quit at some point. But I mean, that's who you are, and that's what you do. What do you want to be retired when you're 38 and not? What do you do the rest of your life? You know what I mean? You have to have a goal and a purpose. I mean, luckily for me, I've transitioned. I got commentary that I'm doing. And you have to. I'm always telling fighters when they're fighting, you have to have an exit strategy. Like, I don't know, you would be a coach, be a commentator, be a trainer, be a chef, do something else. You have to think of something while you're fighting. Don't make this where you have to keep fighting. You have nothing else going on. At the end, you're like, okay, nobody will let me fight because I got knocked out in my last 4 fights. Now what do I do? And start planning. Then it's too late, man. You better figure that out now while you're doing it and work towards that. You can't wait till the very end, I don't think. I mean, some people do.
See, I can't wrap my mind around, why, like with some fighters, like if you look at, Jim Miller right now, for instance, he's on a little 3-fight win streak, but they've
Yeah.
given him, the good fights. He's fighting guys that have, UFC debuts, or, older guys that have been around as long as him, and he's doing really well. And then they'll take these other guys like, Shogun last
Get him.
week, and
What
putting
did
him
that
in there
do,
with a
man? To get him
killer.
knocked out by some young, or Frankie Edgar. Frankie
Yeah,
Edgar's
that's another
built. I
one.
mean, one of the greatest guys we've had in there, just a good person. And they get him against some kid with a 7-fight win streak just to get him knocked out. It's like, that didn't help either guy. I mean, why you can put him in there with those killers? I don't know, but like Frankie Edgar, Chuck Liddell, Matt Hughes, other guys who you
Yeah.
know and like and respect, and they get them knocked out 4 of the last 5 fights. I'm like, dude, that's not. Like, I never, I was like, I'm gonna tell myself when I'm done, and I'm going out on my terms, not on because nobody will pay me to fight him. I'm not doing that, man. I feel like when that happens, there's very few guys who can leave this sport and have fond memories or have a good taste, and they have a very negative view of fighting in the UFC, and I never want that to be me. So I have great memories and great views, and I couldn't trade that for anything.
Yeah. Yeah, it really bothers me. That's another thing that I hate, is that, like the newer fans, the people that, have 25 years or whatever, like I have or whatever, and
Yeah,
they see of Frankie Edgar is him, getting
yeah.
getting finished in his last few fights, and I just hate that, because
I know,
people
man. I
don't.
mean, how about when he fought the bully, and he goes out there and he gets beat, like doesn't even remember the first one, gets knocked
Yeah,
down like 3 times, and just comes back and he was way underweight.
yeah, that's what I was gonna say. He that was before the smaller weight classes. He belonged at, featherweight or whatever,
He
and
didn't cut weight, and he fought at 155.
yeah, and he was a champion, and he defended the belt a few times. He beat BJ Penn, which was, at the time, a really bad dude.
Unbelievable, man.
Um, but yeah, I hate it when they do that. That's another thing. I just hate seeing that. Like, I'll save that for later. We'll talk about that later. But uh, so after the Robbie Lawler fight, you had Kiki Gosen and Ronald Junn, along with a win in WEC over JT Taylor. And what was it like? Well, I know about we'll talk about the with the WEC. Were they fairly new at that point? Had they been around a while? What was it like?
They've been around for a while, and a guy named Scott Adams was kind of their main guy. He fought in the UFC before, but I don't know what happened to him. He was like their main guy I used to talk to, for like one of the main guys. I liked him a lot, and he'd get a hold of me. And like I said, even when you fought in the UFC back then, they didn't sign contracts because there's only 5 or 6 a year. So what you might fight for him twice a year. It's like I'm used to fighting 10 times a year, 8 times a year. I'm like I'm not, and like nobody can get by. You weren't making that much money, so everybody had to fight more. So you fought for other people besides UFC. They'd always kind of tell you, "Hey, don't lose," because if you lose, they might not invite you back. So there's a lot of pressure on these other ones, but always treated me very well. My manager at the time, Phil Sleet, would get me hooked up with them, and it was wasn't UFC level, but they were doing some good things, and it was always out in Lemoore, California. I'd go out there and have a good time. It was I felt like it was definitely a step below the UFC. The caliber of the fighters weren't good, but it was a good organization. I thought they were fair with people and took care of everybody very well. And it was funny because they had bigger guys back then, but I mean they really had a lot of good 145-pound fighters, 135-pound fighters, and nobody else had them. Like UFC never had, and that's when UFC decided to bring their and they just bought the WEC because they had all the best lighter weight fighters.
Yeah. So I understand that you requested uh JT Taylor uh for that fight, did you not?
Well, yes and no. Like I was supposed to fight him before, and if you look on there, you see I had a couple of the fights you talked about, 3 submission wins, like a couple of them in the UFC. Um, well, I was scheduled to fight him maybe once or twice, and the UFC called. I said, "Yeah, I'm doing the UFC." Called Scott Adams. He goes, "Absolutely, you got to take the UFC." Well, this dude goes all over the internet, called me a pussy and like I'm an embarrassment to the sport, and I shouldn't be allowed to fight anymore because I'm a coward and all this. I'm like, I didn't know who he was. I'm like, who is this guy? So he piqued my interest. I was like, if he was smart, he wouldn't have said a word, and I might have actually talked. People need to talk trash about me because I'm trying to be disrespectful. He's like, I'm gonna fight this guy. I requested him, and I said, absolutely, I want to fight this guy. I want to fight this guy. So then, you know, fight comes and he talked a big game. I submitted him in about 2 minutes, and I was like, that's it. All your talk, that's all you got. And I think he'd try to do the same thing to like Matt Lindland. I don't know if he's like psychotic or a lunatic or what was wrong with him, but
Uh,
he did a good job of trying to earn the big fight. He just didn't ever win him. So, something was wrong with the guy. I don't know.
yeah. Dennis Hallman was the guy who used to come out in the speedos and stuff, right? Was that the blonde guy?
He did that. Yeah, he did. Dennis Holman submitted Matt Hughes twice
Really?
in less than a minute total. I think he submitted him once in about 10 seconds, once in about 20 seconds. Dennis Holman's legit fight.
Yeah.
He was good for a long, very good.
Yeah, I'd hate to be grappling with that guy wearing that.
Time out. Put your pants on. Can we redo this? I don't like this.
Try and put you in the north south position with a speedo
Yeah.
on.
Earn the tap that way.
So next up, you fought Caro Parisian, and
Oh shit, yeah.
yeah, how good was his judo, and what did how strong was he? I was always really impressed with him back in the day.
And his judo was on point, man. I remember thinking with that fight, my game plan, I obviously just wanted to strike with the guy. I didn't think his striking was very good, but he did a great job of, like, I think when I fought him, it's probably at one of his peaks, and he did a great job avoiding the shot and moving in, and he'd avoid a shot like when you're throwing punches. That's my problem as a boxer. I was an inside fighter. I'm a Julio Cesar Chavez type of inside grinder, uppercuts, boom, just a dirty, nasty, grindy fighter. You can't do that in MMA. I mean, MMA, as soon as you try and do it, they grab it. You know what I mean? The only thing you can really striking effective in MMA is more a nice, clean, crisp, like a long range fighter is really good as a boxer. MMA doesn't work well. So my boxing wasn't as effective there because I try to get in and do my grimy fight. Well, then he grabbed me, and I was like, well, now I'm in his world. You know what I mean? So, and he had a couple really good tosses on me. I was like, man, this guy, and I wouldn't say overly strong is the right word, but good with his hips and just being pressured.
Yeah.
He when he'd get in a good position, he'd put all his weight on you. It's just hard to move him around. It's just, you know, bad style matchup for what I was trying to do at the time. I was trying to get out there, either submit you or knock you out.
Yeah.
And his goal was to try and throw me and hold me down and wear me down. That's what happened.
Yeah, I remember him being one of like the few people that, is whenever they say somebody's like a judo whatever, like most of them don't really turn out to be super impressive,
Yeah.
but he was one of the ones that was for sure.
He could use it. He was one of the few guys who could actually use it effectively there. You know what I mean?
Um, what else? So did you ever hang out or know Chuck Liddell and Tito and stuff like that? And
Man, I remember I went to Japan. One of my fights in Japan, they showed up together.
yeah,
I remember I was kind of, oh my God, there's Chuck and Tito. I remember I got to roll with Tito. Chuck had hurt his ankle. He didn't come out and say he could fight. He didn't end up fighting, but I remember afterwards, me and it's funny, me and like how it always worked in Japan. You would Roppongi's like the big bar district, and we'd leave the next day. So you'd have about a 12-hour period you could go hang out. I remember I went out with Tito, and I think it was his 25th birthday. And I remember buying him a bunch of drinks, and we kind of hang out and drank a lot. And I remember trying to get Chuck a drink. He's like, nah, I don't drink. I remember thinking, you don't drink. And I see him later on, about 3 years later, and he's just, smashed all over TV. I was like, oh, all right. I guess he picked up the habit of it.
yeah.
Maybe back then he was concentrating on training or whatever, but he didn't drink. But yeah, hang out with those guys was kind of cool, kind of helped, almost boost your confidence a little bit, knowing you're training and fighting with these guys you see on TV. So it really helped out.
Was that back when Chuck was the man?
That was before Chuck was a man. That was when Tito was the man.
Really?
That was when Tito was, like I say, it's probably his 25th birthday. Gee, it's probably in 2000. Right. It's probably, yeah, I think it's right around the year 2000. So he was, be honest with you, people don't realize this. Even people who started watching the UFC, a long time ago, he carried that organization for years. When Dana White and Zuffa first bought it, it wasn't the Chuck show, it was the Tito. He was the biggest thing on. He carried the UFC for a couple of years.
Yeah, yeah. I remember. I don't know what happened with him and Dana and all that stuff. And I remember there was some. I sat through like a whole hour and a half long TV show one time.
I watched. You went to the box at the end.
Yeah, and they're saying Dana's gonna box Tito, and nothing.
Yeah, I was pissed off. I kept looking at TV like, well, the thing's over in 12 minutes. I lied to, you know what I mean? Yeah, I watched that thing too. It was great.
So, so you had a lot, like the UFC just didn't care at all back then about you fighting, with other organizations and all that.
No,
and
they had no contracts because, like I said, they knew they couldn't. Man, I remember like my contract when I fought Robbie Lawler, I got paid 2 and 2, 2000. So, I lost in 2000. You take away my license fee, my cornerman fees, all that, I made like $1,800. You can't make me fight twice a year, $1,800, and then expect me to just do that. I mean, they couldn't. So they had no contract. They just let you do whatever.
So even like the champions or whatever, they were free to fight wherever, or were they stuck?
Here's when that stopped. BJ Penn says, okay, he loses for the title 155. Says, I'm going to go up and fight Matt Hughes. They go, what? Okay. He goes up and fights Matt Hughes. He beats Matt Hughes. Everybody was shocked. And he goes, okay. He went over and fought in Japan. They're like, no, they didn't have him under contract. He could go do whatever he wanted.
Yeah.
So that is happening more. That right when BJ Penn, he changed things. So once he said that, then they started locking everybody down.
Yeah.
Now you are signed UFC. So, but it wasn't until BJ Penn beat Matt Hughes and they couldn't come to a deal on a contract. He wanted more money than they wanted to offer. So he goes, okay, I'll go over to Japan and fight. And they go, oh Jesus, we gotta lock these guys down before they get a title from now on. And then they start locking everybody down.
Yeah. And I remember at one point Dana was taking Chuck. I guess that was before the BJ Penn thing, probably, huh?
That might have been, or maybe not. That might have been. The UFC can do whatever they want. So since Dana wanted him to go over there, they can always break that and go let him do whatever he wants. You got to understand something. UFC contracts are set up to help the UFC. They're not set up to help the fighter at all. So UFC can cut your contract at any time they want. And they could have cut his contract and said, "We'll write you a new one. Just go do this for it." I don't know. I don't remember when that was.
Yeah.
It was right around the same time though.
Yeah. Yeah, Pride always had a lot of good fights. They had a lot of talented people over there that never got a chance over here.
Pride was
a lot of people.
I used to love watching Pride.
It's extremely fun to watch, man. And I don't remember what was the you might have legend over there. He had been fighting forever, and he was fighting in Pride, and his freaking ear fell off because he'd had so much like reconstructive surgery, and
Yeah,
and I don't
exactly.
remember who it was, but I just remember his ear falling off and thinking he was just laughing about it. He's got his ear in his hand. you know, Pretty crazy. I
And
can't remember who it was though.
I don't know, but I remember, I don't care what anybody says, for a brief period, at least in the sport, Sakuraba was probably the best fighter in the world. That dude was, and he wasn't very big, but I mean, just the people they throw him in with, it was unbelievable. That dude was not that big of a guy, and he did some amazing stuff. A lot of fun to watch. You go watch that 2000 Grand Prix, when he fights Horace Gracie for an hour and a half, hour and a half in one night,
That's
and
crazy.
wins, and then he has to fight another fight after that against Igor Vovchanson, who was
That
240 pounds. I
that
mean,
guy
it's
was good too.
unbelievable. Oh, dude, he was a tank. But
Yeah.
yeah, unbelievable. I mean, how can you fight somebody for an hour and a half? I've never heard of such.
That's pretty crazy. Uh,
Yeah,
so after that, you ended up fighting Joe Riggs,
yeah.
and were you two guys familiar with each other?
We were
And
friends. We were friends. It was tough. I remember as soon as I got the phone call from Joe Silva, I was like, damn. Because Joe fought, when I first met Joe, he's fighting at 205, It's like, damn, he's a big guy. And then he cut down to he dropped down to 170. I was like, damn, all right. And I was like, I have a sickness or something. I can't turn down a fight, or else I feel like I'm a coward. So I was like, all
yeah,
right, I'll take it. And then right afterwards, Joe called me. He's like, man, it sucks. Because we were buddies. He's like, I didn't really want to fight you, but it's not like nowadays. You could probably tell people what you want. They said, this is who you're fighting. You go, okay, or no, and they probably wouldn't call you anymore. So
yeah,
I said, all right, we'll do this, and it is what it is, man. I didn't really want to fight a buddy, but I've had to fight buddies before and had to fight them afterwards. It is what it is. You have to do it.
yeah. And that was one of because you've never been submitted, you've never been knocked out, correct?
Correct.
In boxing or MMA or anything, right?
Yeah, but that was a very frustrating one because, man, I mean, if you watch the fight, um, somehow it's funny. I went after the fight. I went and trained with Joe once for about 2 weeks. I don't think I took him down once. In the fight, I take him down the first round. He goes and tries to like double underhook me, and I was like, "Oh, I'm in trouble." I threw a headlock and got on top. I'm like, "Oh, okay," and I'm feeling good and a ton. I remember he hit me once, like right at the end of the round, and I just like sit up. I'm just like hearing ring him, bing. And I kind of look around. I'm like, "What's going on here?" And then I look, and he's about to hit me again. I was like, "Oh," I kind of came to, and he rocked me, kind of busted my eye open a little bit. But then second round, I remember I get on, like he takes me down right away, and I reverse and get on top. I'm like, okay, and I could tell, like it was his first time making 70. I could tell he's done. Like he's told me since, and he's like, man, I was done. He's like, I had nothing left, and I'm working on passing his guard, and he was on bottom, and he just throws an elbow up and hits me in the head and cut me open. I was like, man, I remember, this is funny. I remember, you know, John McCarthy comes over and he's like, Bert, let me look. And then they got the doctor in and they got stuff on my face. They're covering my eye and they're doing all this stuff. And I remember pretty bad. I'm thinking shit. I remember after about a minute, I go, I think I'm going to be all right. I think I can fight. I remember John McCarthy goes, what? Over. And I look over and there's like, Bruce Buffer's in there, the ring cards. And they're like, oh, okay, the fight. Never mind. I thought the fight was still going. They're like, no, the fight's over, dude. So that sucked. That really hurt me because I lost. I lost like 2 UFCs in a row. I was like, man, you never knew what that means. So that was a very bad. I felt like I had a great chance of winning that fight. I'm passing his guard. If I pass his guard, I know he was tired. I felt like, okay, this is my time to shine. And because of that fight, so I was like, damn, I knew I was close to getting to where I wanted to be, and it just kind of knocked me back a couple
Yeah.
notches. But that led to me getting on the Ultimate Fighter, so I can't complain.
Yeah, uh you were really close, to a title shot several times, in my opinion. I don't know. I can't remember what the rankings were back then or anything, but
Yeah.
in my opinion, you were pretty close, and um, I was always, so disappointed that I never got to see that
Yeah,
GSP
me
fight
too.
because I could just totally see a world where, because you had such a good guillotine, and that was before GSP had really like tightened everything up, and all that, and I could just see him shooting those takedowns and you catching him in that guillotine because you had so many guillotine wins, and that
Mhm.
throughout your career, and you had a really good guillotine, and I could just picture that in my head, you know, being a big fan
Man,
of yours and everything.
when I fought Matt Hughes, I thought I was going to get him, and I had it in there really tight. I knew I did, and I was like, man, I got this. I remember right at the beginning, I thought this fight's about to be over right now, but he was really smart. I remember I had my right leg over his back. I had the guillotine in tight, but he put all his weight on my left leg, so I had to get my left leg over to push his hips away, and he just kept putting all his weight on that left leg, and wouldn't let me get it around him. And so I just kind of, I was like, man, I was trying to pull that leg out. If I could have pulled out and pushed his hips away, I was like, the fight's over. And he knew that. I knew it. And he didn't let me have it. So I remember I probably tried for about 10 seconds to squeeze. I'm thinking, man, you're not going to get it. You're just going to gas your arms out. You have to let go and go to something else. So, but I mean, it just really showed me how the dude was really understood everything about grappling, where everything needed to be. I mean, what positioning was. He knew if he just held that leg, I couldn't finish him, and I was going to wear myself out. So I had to move on.
Yeah, was that when GSP had the title when you fought Matt Hughes, or was
Yes,
it
yes, yes,
okay?
yes. Like after I was on the Ultimate Fighter, they fought it. Like whoever won the Ultimate Fighter got the title fight. Well, Matt Hughes still had it, but as soon as our thing was over, GSP in the rematch beats Matt Hughes. So then
Okay,
GSP holds the title. Hughes was trying to get back in that title picture when I fought him. So I mean, I took that fight. I was thinking, man, I just, you know, I might be going out of order for you, but I was like,
yeah,
yeah, I'm doing whatever I can to get right back in that title hunt. So I'll fight Matt Hughes, and if I win that one, then I'm set up for the title.
yeah, yeah. I'm kind of getting myself out of order too because I keep bringing up stuff that I meant to save.
Yeah,
But so let's talk about the Ultimate Fighter show and
yeah,
how that came about and what it was like for you, because that's where I really got to know you as a fan, because I'd seen your other fights and stuff, but I because you just seemed like you were you know just seemed like a normal guy that could just kick people's ass, you know, like you're a firefighter, you know, and that's just I guess that's probably why I liked you better than everybody else that was on the show, you know. I don't know why,
yeah.
but how'd that all come about? And because I mean, they acted like it's the comeback, but you weren't ever really gone.
I
So
know that's what I felt like. I was like, oh, what? I was like, I'm not here. No, I just got a phone call from Joe Silva, and he's like, yeah, we got this idea. We're gonna do we got the comeback. It's gonna be actual people in the UFC, not people who hadn't made it there yet. We're gonna bring UFC veterans in and get. I remember talking to Danny like you're getting a title fight, whoever wins, and we really want you on here. I was like, hell yeah, I'd love to do this. And no, I knew from watching the Ultimate Fighter how you got these other guys who, in my opinion, hadn't been as that great, and they were getting so much publicity and like everybody knew everything about them. They're getting more sponsorship. They're getting us all the stuff that you know people are going to get to see you, and then they're going to get to know you and watch you, and then they're going to root for you, root against you, whatever it's going to be. But this is everything we've been wanting to get, and going on this show is going to help. But not only that, just me being on the show, you got to understand the whole time I was doing it, I got to train kids and work on the fire department. For many years after that, it's 2006. I hadn't been able to train like a real fighter ever since. I mean, I did, but I mean, not like everybody else. Like I said, I always had to go to the firehouse, and I always had to have, have the family. This is the only time really in my career I had like 6 weeks of just going in every day and working out with some of the best guys in the world. So just go immerse yourself in that, because I never got to do it. A lot of people complain like, "Oh man, I don't have my phone." I was like, I don't care about a TV. I just wanted to be there training and enjoying it, man. I remember me and Matt Sayer would talk about that, like about that a lot, just talking about how good of an opportunity it was to go. Made a lot of good friends there, great people. Most of those fighters were awesome. I was lucky. I was on the comeback where you already had UFC veterans. If I had people like peeing in my food and
yeah,
piss on my bed, I'd have killed somebody. So
yeah.
I'm just glad everybody was cool there.
Who were the coaches on that season?
We didn't have like coaches. We
That's what I
had
was
basically
thinking.
Randy Couture, George St. Pierre. They would coach both. They would take this is a workout for the day. They give it to both teams. So, and they wouldn't. But like they said, look, what they felt like was people like me, and, Matt. So just some of the guys that we had more fights than probably Randy or George St. Pierre combined. So
Yeah,
like we can't be the coaches. We're just going to offer you guys your coach and tell you what to do. So they just kind of let us do our own thing. Um, I love the concept. It was great.
and so your first fight on the show, you fought Pete Spratt, and you had already beat him before. Were you pretty confident going into that fight?
Absolutely. That's like the weird thing about that is when you get control of like we got control of picking what the fights. And you want to know who you want the best matchups possible. So we're like, all right, as soon as we got control, they go, okay, um, who should we put on there? And when I got to my weight class, I said, well, I already fought Pete Spratt once and I beat him in a minute. And they're like, well, let's do that again so we can keep control. You don't want to lose control, like pick a different fight. So they felt like you already beat him once. In a minute, you're going to beat him again. And that keeps control for us. So then I was like, all right, it was quite a bit of pressure because you wouldn't think there would be. You think this is all about me. I don't care. This is but you did feel like, man, there's a lot. I want to help my team out. You wouldn't think you'd care about the team because this is an individual sport, but you did. So I was like, man, I got to beat this guy because I want to keep my team in control so they can get the better matchup. So,
Yeah.
I knew the game plan there. I knew Pete was a phenomenal athlete. I knew he was great on his feet, and I felt like he had some holes in his groundwork. So get him to the ground as soon as possible and submit him.
So next up, you fought, who was it? Dean Thomas.
Yeah.
And did you submit him as well?
How good Dean Thomas is on the ground. And funny thing is, like, me and him would, like, most people got some kind of staph infection on that show, and so there was a long time people couldn't train very much. But like, me and Dean didn't really get it, so we trained together about every day, just a lot of sparring. I remember sometimes we'd be sparring and boxing, and I'd look over and like be like four people just sitting there and watch this. I'm like, train, do something. What do you want? What do you guys watch this for? And so we had a lot of really good rounds. And so we had to fight, and I just really tried to step up my punching power and throw hard punches because I knew he's really slick and really good. To make him, he would kind of like try and take me down or pull guard, and I'd be on top. And I know just from training with him though how good his triangle chokes were, and I knew I had to fight kind of a safe fight because if I was open and trying, like, it's hard to pass his guard, and if I really tried, he'd probably get me a triangle choke. So I just had to try and control him a lot of the fight, and try and beat him on my feet as much as I can, get as many takedowns when he tried to shoot in, and just kind of control the pace of the fight. So that's what happened. Wasn't a great fight because his skill level was so high. I knew I had to be careful with him. I mean, I don't think people really ever gave him the credit he deserved as far as his ground.
On talking
Oh yeah,
during the fights and everything, and I remember him being pretty good.
he's very. I mean, I think he was better than people gave him credit for. I mean, his stand up was crisp and clean. He had good reach, and his ground was really good. He just. I remember one of his fights, a big fight. He was fighting Kenny Florian, and he blew his knee out in the middle of the fight, and that was it. So at the beginning of the fight, actually.
So you fought Matt Hughes in the ultimate finale fight.
Matt Serra.
Oh, sorry, Matt Serra. My bad.
Yeah.
Matt Serra, and tell us about that fight, and tell us about how it affected your career and what all changed after that fight.
That was a changing point, and not only my career, but I feel like my life in many ways. Horrible fight, to be honest with you. The problem was, the winner got, a couple $100,000, a title shot, a car, a watch, those other stuff. The loser got about 10 grand. So it's just like kind of a big difference. I don't think they should ever put that kind of pressure on anybody like that. I mean, that's just way too much disparity difference. And I mean, if you make it, that's not right.
Yeah.
So neither one of us wanted to lose. That was a fight where nobody fought to win. Both guys fought to lose. We've talked about it, like he was afraid to do anything to lose. I was too. Just a difference in what we thought was going on there. I mean, looking at it now, he would push me into the fence, and I was like, all right, I'd stay there, and I was like, okay, he'd had a couple of dumbbell underhooks. He'd try to take me down. I'd stop him, and I'd hit him a little bit in the side, maybe hit him in the face a little bit. I mean, the way I was looking at it was, he's not doing any damage to me, and I'm doing, like, on a scale of 1 to 10, I'm doing, like, so every time he try and take me down, I just lean against the fence and kind of those little shots. Looking back, I know he was thinking, well, I'm pushing this guy against the fence. I'm winning the fight. And you could tell the judges didn't know what to think because one of the judges gave me all 3 rounds, and then the other two gave him all 3 rounds. So it's like, I've never seen a split decision like that. I've never seen a split decision where one judge gives you all 3 rounds and the other judges give them all 3 rounds. They just didn't know how to score it because I didn't know how to score it. I was like, man, I thought I was winning, because I thought I'm doing the damage, and I thought that's what they said. In my eyes, I'm winning. so I lose that split decision, and I was just like devastated, man. I was like, man, all that. I mean, I didn't get as much money as I wanted. I didn't get my title shot. I didn't get any of this stuff, and it just made me really like. That was another time I, thought about quitting, and I was like, man, I gotta go earn that money. I gotta earn, and I gotta change what I do. I was like, I'm never gonna try and win a decision again, because that was the only fight I can really think of that I was like, I'm gonna win a decision. I'm gonna outpoint this. I know, I mean, Matt's tough to do anything to. You're not gonna submit him. You're gonna submit Matt Sarah? No. You think it's tough to knock out? I was like, I'm not gonna do that. So I'm gonna win a decision. And after that, I'm like, never gonna try to do that again. I'll do anything. I'd rather go out there and lose trying to fight my fight than go out there and try and win a decision. I'm just never gonna do it again. And after I decided to do that, my career changed. I won 10 bonuses in my next 13 fights, I think, so it really changed. I was like, I was more exciting. I was fun to watch. I gained a lot more fans. And I just, it wasn't that I didn't care. I just said, man, I'd rather, I'm going to fight this way no matter what. Like, I can't live with myself. Like, when I lost, I felt bad, not only for that I didn't win that fight, but I didn't even fight the way I wanted to fight. I fought like just a safe fight, and I'm always against that. I hate that. So I myself not like myself just for money. And I was like, man, I just can't do that. I just can't live with myself if I do that again. So after I made that decision, it never happened again. So, but I say that helped me from a fight standpoint, but also just in my life, I kind of decided, like, after that, I felt that, some people deal with adversity and deal with problems, and it makes them better. And some people, it destroys them. And I felt like, it just let me know that no matter what happens, I'm going to keep fighting and work on things to get better and improve, and find ways to accomplish my goals no matter what. I don't care if my house burns. I don't care what happens. I'm going to figure it out, what I have to do to be successful in that fight. Like, if you don't deal with adversity, you're never going to figure that out. Let's say I win that fight and I go and I fight for the title, whatever. I mean, maybe I never developed these other skills that I have to come up to solve problems in my life. But it happened, and I feel like I have them now. So in many ways, that was a terrible night and a terrible fight. In many ways, it was the greatest thing that ever happened to me, because I feel like I'm a much better person because of it.
So you're probably one of the few people that's ever gotten the double bonuses, correct? You don't hear about
I don't
people
know if
getting
I'm
those a lot.
I've gotten it before, but I don't know if I'm the only one.
Yeah. I've just never hear about it. You're the only person I've ever heard about getting, double bonuses. Usually for what, submission of the night and fight of the night, probably, or.
Yeah, I got sub of the night and fight of the night. That was not that fight, but yeah, at the end, I did get that one. But now I was mad. There was a couple of situations I thought I was going to get the sub of the night. Well, one of them, I remember when I fought Matt Brown. If I'm jumping ahead for it, but I got that double submission on him.
Yeah.
And I was all excited. Like, it looks like sub of the night. And then Brock Lesnar gets beat up by Shane Carwin for a round. And then he takes him down and chokes him with just like a wrestler, squeeze him in the head, and they gave him the sub of the night.
He
like,
shouldn't have got that.
Me? That wasn't even a good sub. It's terrible.
Yeah.
I was pissed, but whatever.
Okay. So the Matt Serra fight, and so you have a super unique, style, even like, the way you hold your hands and everything, and you were real heavy on the front leg. I guess I might have just noticed it more after the Sarah fight, or maybe it was there all along and I just didn't pick up on it. Was that something that you kind of switched around after the Sarah fight, or?
Well, I don't know if I'd say I switched around, but that was, I think, when I got more of the mindset, like, not that I don't care, but I was like, I'm looking to take people out as soon as possible. So I was like, I'm gonna try and knock you out, and if I can't, yeah, you probably could take me down, but I'm gonna be going for the submission the whole time. Like, I do not want to go the distance. I hated judging. I've always hated judging. I disagree. Like I said, it goes back to my days in Japan. I thought I won some of those fights. I got called draws or majority losses. I was like, I learned I don't know what judges are looking for. I've lost 5 split decisions, so I'm like, I'm not trying to go the distance. So I'm going to try, my weight's going to, and like I said, being more of, my boxing style was a little different. That's not conducive to MMA. So I was like, I'm going to put more weight on that front foot where I'm coming, pushing off, putting weight in there where I'm leaning forward, trying to get hard punches off. If you're putting weight on the back foot, you're waiting to counter, but or push. I would if I'm on that back foot, it's a push off so I can get that front foot where I can lean forward and put my weight into it.
Yeah.
I wanted to take you out if I was coming throwing hard punches.
Yeah. I thought it was funny because as I was going back and rewatching all your fights, I really wasn't paying, so much attention to it until I don't remember which fight it was. Joe Rogan was like, "Oh, Chris Lytle just threw a really rare jab." And then I was thinking about it. I just watched like 3 of your fights and you didn't throw not one jab.
I brought that up before. I remember I was like, man, Joe Rogan's like, rare jab thrown by Chris. I said, damn it, man, that's kind of embarrassing. It's funny. Whenever I do commentary for the bare knuckle, every time we interview everybody, and everybody we ask, one of my Sean Willock, she's like, what is your most important push? And they go, jab, it's always a jab. And I was like, yeah. I'm one of the few guys who can't say that. Like I disagree wholeheartedly. I didn't throw many jabs. It's like like I said, my style for boxing was in my fighting didn't it like I don't have long arms and I'm not overly quick. I'm not one of the fastest guys. Like I'm gonna get in and beat you, bludgeon you with a lot of hard shots. That's my goal. I'm not gonna go in there and try and one punch knock out you. I'm not just gonna try and out slick you and just throw a lot of jabs and move. I don't have the physical makeup for that. So I'm gonna use my toughness and go in there and try and push you backwards and make you mentally break and make you quit. That's my game plan. So, and to me, that's not about jab. That's about getting in and landing hard shots and pushing people backwards. And if I get you to back up, you're in trouble. If I can like mentally, the best thing in the world is mentally break somebody, in my opinion. My boxing matches, those were my favorite when I was going there against tough guys and I would just wear them out and beat them. Pretty good feeling.
Yeah. So was there ever a point, like, I mean, even after this point that you really felt like you could have, fought full time, and gave up the fire department and stuff like that, or
I mean, in a way, when you're starting to make some decent money from it, but I mean, I here's the problem, two problems. If I was wanting to do that, I was going to have to uproot my family and move someplace. And I really wasn't willing to do that. 4 kids, they're involved in school activities, friends. I'm like, am I going to move all my family to go to train an American top team or somewhere in California when, I'm one injury away from, I'm not doing this anymore. That's pretty selfish of me. I didn't want to look at it like that. And then I had a job at the fire department where like I actually enjoyed going to work. I still do. Like I never wake up and be like, got to go in the fire department days. Always like, I get to go to the firehouse today. I got friends there. I'm going to hang out. I'm going to work out. I'm going to cook some great food. I'm going to do some fun stuff. Maybe you can save a life. Who knows? It's going to be a good day. I wasn't willing to give that up to go fight for, I mean, not that I didn't love fighting, but I had a great system worked out where I was. Could I have got as good a training where I was? No. But, life to me wasn't all about that one aspect. I wouldn't put all my eggs in that one basket. I had friends who did that, and they're like, man, once it became this, it wasn't as fun. It was just a full-time job. Like I like the fact that I had other aspects of my life. It kept me grounded, it kept me in reality. It kept me loving the sport, not making it like a full-time job. So I never really thought about seriously doing it. I know I'd have probably been a better fighter, but I was like, man, in the big picture of my life, I mean, I'd rather keep my family intact and happy and me being happy. Like I said, I got a lot of different facets to my life. And fighting was definitely a huge one, but it wasn't the only one.
okay. So they were pretty cool. They were pretty cool about it whenever you first started, whenever you first got on, as a firefighter. They were pretty understanding and all that you were a cage fighter.
Yeah, they loved it, man. They were like, cool, yeah, this guy's nuts, man. But then they were like, well, I mean, as long as I worked at the fire department, didn't interfere with it, they were fine. And I never really, I mean, probably the first 10 years on, I never got hurt.
Yeah.
So they didn't care. So, I mean, didn't bother them at all. They'd like to get together and watch my fights. So,
well, I guess when you think about it, firefighting is kind of a lot more dangerous than cage fighting.
Yeah, cage fighting, you might get hurt, but in firefighting you might die. You know what I mean? Yeah. So it's just like people die on our job every year. Not too many people are dying in the cage. So it's like you might get cut open, but you're not gonna have the roof collapse on you, or you're not gonna fall through the basement and die. So you're gonna be all right.
So next up, you fought Jason Gilliam, or I
Yeah.
think, right? And
Yeah.
see, this is I didn't realize because my favorite fight of yours was always the Matt Brown fight.
Yeah.
Where you did the same. I didn't realize you did the same move
Mhm.
on Jason Gilliam that you did to Matt Brown. I didn't remember that until I went back and was watching. Where you go over into side control and you pull that leg up over and wrap the arm and the head around, and you're in kind of like a mounted triangle, and then you
Mhm.
got a straight arm lock from there because the other arm's just free. There's no way to
Yep.
protect. Was that something that you train regularly, or was that just something you
Oh yeah.
figured out on the spot? Or
No, that's one of my favorite moves. I do in the gym a lot to people, and especially going against bigger guys. If I get side mount on, they're good at bridging. So I was like, I got to stop this bridge from bumping me off. So I step over the head and like do the reverse triangle on the head, figure four of the head. So then their head's up, and then they can't bridge. If they can't use their neck, so I'm like, okay, now that I've got their head bridge, I can really squeeze and get this triangle choke. That works sometimes, but if not, I'm like, well, I got two arms in my head and their arms right there. Might as well get this arm lock as well. Um, I know so fortunate for me, I was able to hit that on that time. And I remember once I was down in Florida, I hit I had a triangle choke from bottom and I got in a straight arm lock. And so I thought I was about to break this dude's arm. And then I realized he's not moving. I look down and he's unconscious. So I'm talking to the ref. I'm like, hey, dude, he's out. So I felt that was another time I got a kind of a double submission. And so I think I've had 3 double submissions in my career. So I don't know many people who've got that 3 double submissions, but yeah.
yeah, you definitely deserved the submission of the night bonus on both of those. And to me, that was just one of the coolest things I'd ever seen. Especially Liam. I think you had both arms trapped. So these guys are
Yeah.
they
He
can't even
couldn't
tap
tap. I
out.
think he starts yelling or tapping with his feet or something. And
Yeah.
they stopped it. But yeah, I knew I had that in there good. I was like, man, yeah, that was
So
a phone. Yeah.
Um, I don't remember if it was the next fight after that one or if it was a few fights down the line, but you fought Tiago Alves. And
Mhm.
that was another one of the fights that, you know, I mean, I didn't agree with the stoppage on that one at all.
Yeah, I was pissed too, man. Because I got, if you look at the first punch in the fight he threw, cut me open.
Yeah,
Like I pushed him back with a couple punches and kicks and push him back. I landed some good punches. And like the first time he counters, he hits me, cuts me open. I was like, all right, we just kept fighting, blood got my eye a little bit, not a big deal. They didn't even look at it or do anything until like the second round. And after the second round, they went over there and they stopped. I'm like, dude, it's not even bleeding anymore. I just didn't understand. Like, why would you stop it now? I think the judges had it 1 round apiece. It was a great fight, man. I was loving it. Like he was landing a lot of good kicks on
yeah.
my
How
left
hard were
leg.
those kicks?
I was landing a lot of good punches. I felt like, okay, we're gonna see who's gonna drop first. Either your eye's gonna blow up or my leg's gonna give out. Well, let's see what's gonna happen. I was loving it. I was like, this is exactly the kind of fight I like. Um, and immediately after that fight, I was like, dude, I like we need to run this back. We need to do a rematch. And I thought for sure. I talked to Joe Silva. I thought for sure that was happening. The problem is Thiago won like his next 2 fights and got a title shot. So I was like, I get it. It doesn't benefit him to go fight me again. He already got the win, but that was a tough fight. I think, man. So like I said, it was tied after 2 rounds. We got the fight of the night, which kind of helped take the sting away a little bit. But I wasn't happy about that. They stopped it due to a cut that happened on the first punch, and they stopped it 9 minutes later.
Yeah, I had you winning both rounds, but I mean, he was landing those good leg kicks. How bad were those leg
Oh,
kicks?
they hurt, man. I mean, they hurt, but to me, leg kicks, like I've never been stopped by leg kicks, obviously. So I mean, it hurt, but it was anything. I was willing to take him. If I could hit you in the face, I'll take a leg kick. I mean, that's my trade-off. I'll do that all day long. I felt like that would be one where I'd be hurting for a week after the fight, but I don't care after the fight. We'll do whatever. But I mean, yeah, I haven't went back and watched that fight. I just knew from what I heard, the judges had it 1 round apiece.
Yeah,
So I don't know, but I felt like I was landing good shots to him. He was landing good kicks. But I mean, it was a good fight. I thought it was a lot of fun.
yeah, it was a good fight.
Like I said, I like the fights where it's like this is what I'm going to do, and I'm gonna do this, and we're like, okay, who's gonna break first? And I feel like when I'm in those situations, I haven't broken, so I feel like I mean, maybe he wouldn't have either. And then in that last round, then he would have had an even better fight. But I don't know. I just thought like, I have too much. I have been around long enough. I have understanding and smarts, and I know how to fight smart. But I think my pride or my balls or whatever it is makes me say, no, I'm going to do it this way, my way, and you have to beat me that way. And I just don't think if I do that, it's going to happen too often. So I probably could have been smarter about a lot of my fights, this one included. I was like, no, I'm gonna win this fight if I keep doing what I'm doing. So I just didn't try and change it. I was like, all right, you kick me, I'm punching you, and then we'll see who wins.
Yeah.
Well, it got stopped, so I didn't get to find out.
Did he was? Do you know how many fights he had before that fight in the UFC, or if he was pretty new at that point, right?
I don't know. I remember he fought Spencer Fisher, so he'd been around for a little bit, man. He'd had some fights. He wasn't brand new,
Yeah.
but he'd had at least probably 4 fights,
Okay. Well,
maybe more. I don't
I
know.
guess it makes more sense then that he got a title shot after a couple more. I was thinking he was relatively new to the.
No, he'd had a couple fights, and we were. I mean, like I said, we had a good fight. And I think he won like 2 fights after that. And they're like, all right, title fight, because he weren't his arm. Right around there. Maybe he didn't get the title. I can't remember, but he climbed up like after that. He got real close to there, and so like that's why I didn't get that rematch. I was like pushing for right afterwards. So like, man, we got to run this back because first of all, it's fight of night. Second of all, like I felt like I don't know who's going to win that fight, and why you can't stop it on a cut. That's stupid.
Yeah. So after that, you had couple wins, couple losses. One of them was like a 33-second knockout of Kyle Brady. I believe.
Bradley.
Oh, Bradley. Yeah, Bradley.
Yeah.
Were you surprised you were able to finish him that quick, or did you kind of see the holes in his game and figured you could?
Well, it wasn't holes in his game. What it was, you know, you give me a brand new guy, the first fight in UFC. I'm a veteran, I've been around, and I know the pressure and I know what you don't want to have happen. You don't want somebody like jumping on you right away because you're not used to it, and you deal with a lot of different pressures. So I was like, I always think if it's somebody's first fight, you got to jump on them right away and try and make them quit, try and make them say like question themselves, or they're just not like the lights. The cameras. You've been ready for this for years, hoping to get there. A lot of pressure, and a lot of people have those first fight UFC jitters, and they don't perform well. So you just got to jump on them right there. That's the quickest opportunity. Don't let him get comfortable. And so I just tried to make sure he didn't get comfortable. And as soon as I land a couple punches, like just pour it on right now. And I did. And then it was like, all right, that was the smartest thing for me to do. And I always talk about when we do the bare knuckle, the BKFC, man, you got to jump. If this guy has a handy fight, you better jump on him right away. Make him go, what am I doing here? Hold on. Look at these. This is a big deal. I just got punched, but the bare knuckle. And some people mentally just shut down for a second. And that's all it takes. If you can get that 1 second advantage, land a couple clean shots, that's a wrap. And that's kind of what happened that fight. I actually felt bad for Kyle because I knew he wanted to be there real bad. And just, I'm glad he got a couple other opportunities.
Yeah. And so you ended up going on a 4-fight winning streak after that. And you took on Matt Serra again. And how'd that fight go that time?
Man, it was interesting because when Joe Silva called and said that, tried to ask about that fight, I was like, dude, to be honest, I didn't want the fight. I was just like, first of all, I love Matt. He's one of my favorite people. I didn't want to fight him the first time. I didn't want to fight him again. And because I had no problem with him. We're buddies. But the main thing was it was a terrible first fight. And what do I stand to gain? What if I win the second one? All that's going to make me think is, why didn't I fight like that the first time? Which is kind of how it ended up. But I mean, I didn't think Matt would try and stand up with me the whole time, but, talking to him later, he said in his mind, he was like, look, I'm trying to get back to this title run. He's like, how do I do that? He's like, if I beat you by a boring fight, that's not going to do it. They're never going to put me in there if I get a boring fight. It's like, I felt like if I can knock you out, nobody else had done it, then they're going to get me back in the title fight. So I said, I'm going to try and knock this guy out. I'm like, cool. So we had just a stand-up war for most of the time, and I won the decision. And like I said, people are like, do you feel redemption from that? Do you feel better? I was like, no. It didn't get me the title fight, and it didn't get me. All it did was, make a friend of mine lose a fight. So I didn't really I was glad to win in front of my hometown. I really was. I mean, just to get to fight there, I don't care who I fought, it was going to be a good time, especially to win. You got to win when you're fighting your hometown. It was the first time the UFC had been to Indianapolis. It was a great thing, so I loved it. But you know, I hated seeing my friend lose, even though it was against me. And like I said, it didn't make me feel like that's what I should have done the first time. I guess it just made me think, well, that sucked. I wish I'd have, fought to win last time instead of fought not to lose.
Yeah. And so at that point, Matt Serra was, a former champ, a guy who had beat GSP, at one point,
Yeah.
and I mean, you had to have been pretty close to a title shot, you would think.
Oh yeah.
I mean, at that point, I could never understand why they never gave you the shot.
Well, what happened after that? I think what really bothered me after that, I was scheduled to fight Carlos Condit.
Yeah.
And I was super excited for that because, like, all right, man, we were supposed to fight earlier, and in training I blew my knee out, had to have ACL replacement and all that, tore my meniscus. I was like, all right. And then we're scheduled to fight again, and I remember about 5 weeks out, I tore my meniscus again training. I remember thinking, man, I went to my doctor, and I was like, man, you gotta drain my knee because it's swollen up. And he's like, well, I believe you tore your meniscus. I was like, nah, just drain it. He's like, I'll drain it, but it's gonna swell back up tomorrow. He said, how about this? I'll drain it. Go get an MRI today. I said, all right. So he drained it, went to get an MRI the next day, swelled right back up, and he called me and said, yeah, you tore your meniscus. I was like, well, I'm doing this fight. I don't care. What do I do? He said, well, we can have surgery and I'll cut out like maybe 20-40% of your meniscus, and then we'll go from there. I said, all right. So I woke up after the surgery and I said, man, we had to cut the whole thing out. I didn't know it was that bad. So like, all right, what does that mean? He's like, well, let's see how you feel. So I didn't do anything for like the next week and a half. And then I said, all right, I'm going to fight. So I just went to the gym and started training, but it was Carlos Condit who never takes people down. So like, this is going to be a stand-up war. I'm doing the fight. And so about a week before I leave for Australia, I get a phone call and they're like, yeah, Carlos is out. He hurt his knee. I was like, damn, dude. And so they said, we got a replacement for you. We're bringing in Brian Ebersol. I was like, man, I just knew I trained with Brian a long time ago. I was like, he's a big wrestler. All they're going to try to do is take me down. I hadn't done any groundwork in like a month.
Yeah.
So I was like, man. And that sickness got into me again where I just can't turn a fight down. I felt like a coward if I did. I was like, man, you're trying to be the best fighter in the world to hold the title, and you turn down a fight, you can't do it. So I was like, I don't do it. So I should be able to finish this guy no matter what. And I won the first round and lost the next two. I totally gassed out. I remember in that third round, I had nothing. It was just the brutal fight, man. And just all they kept trying to do was take me down, and just that you don't understand. There's different kinds of conditioning. I mean, you got wrestling conditioning, which is the hardest to me. I mean, I can stand up for days. I could do jujitsu for days, but you start throwing that wrestling, everything gets tiring then. So that wrestling just wore me out. And I remember the third round, I had him in this guillotine. I heard him gurgle. I was like, oh, I think I got him. And he got out. And I was like, I just didn't have anything left after that. It sucked. So I lost that. And I was like, that's when remember after that, I kind of never really rehabbed my knee. So then I kind of said, okay, I got to help my knee out. I took a couple of weeks off and actually stayed home. And like I never stayed home. Every day I'd go to the gym, no matter what. I was adamant about going to the gym. So this is like one of the first time in a long time I took off a couple of weeks, didn't go to the gym. And, went to my son's basketball game and my daughter's gymnastics meet and all that stuff. And then I was like, man, I got kids in high school. I said, and I just decided, I was like, man, you got to be home more. This is you're not going to get to your title now. Because I thought I was real close again. I thought whoever wins that Condit fight me is going to get the title shot. So it's like, that's why I was so adamant. I was like, I've almost been there 3 or 4 times. This is my last hurrah, and it didn't happen. So I was like, man, I remember they called me to ask about the Dan Hardy fight. You want to do this main event? I was like, hell yeah. And that's why I went to the gym and I started feeling all those feelings like, man, I should be in my son's game or something. I was upset. So then that's when I decided I needed to retire. But I knew I was going to do that fight first. I was going to do my main event, my last fight against Dan Hardy. And no matter what, that was going to be my last fight. So that was going to give me the freedom to go to the gym and train every day because I knew that meant that it was going to be over. So I just felt like it was time to go out when I wanted to. Like I said, not because I was told to, and not because whatever, just because I felt like I should be doing that, be home a little bit more and be around my family a little bit more.
Yeah. But that makes a lot of sense. I didn't realize that you had been coming off injury before that Ebersol fight and
I
all that.
didn't tell anybody because to me, you don't. To me, I remember my buddy Mitron was trying to go to it, was like, man, I ain't gonna say that because I don't make excuses for a loss. I didn't win, I didn't submit him. I should have submitted the guy. I should have done something. And that's on me for taking. If I'm not 100% to fight, then don't take the fight. And if you do, don't go tell people this is why you lost. I hate it when people do that stuff. Well, had a back injury. Well, then no, you lost a fight. Don't make you sound like an idiot making excuses. I mean, like I said, that was one of the other things I talked about when I after I lost that fight to Matt Serra. One of the things I was making, trying to listen to people about that he lost because of this, and the judges wanted you to, Matt Serra had a bigger personality on the TV show, and I was like, yeah, yeah, yeah. But then after a while, I said, man, when you don't make any excuses for anything that goes wrong in your life, I promise it's your fault. Don't if you may blame anybody else for anything that happens, you're never going to get better. You can't correct problems that aren't your fault. So then I started looking at everything, and everything that goes wrong in my life is my fault. I promise you. So um, once I accepted that and said, quit making excuses for yourself, my life got better. You know what I mean? And I think about anybody, man. I see all kinds of people. They always make excuses, never going to get better. But once you take responsibility and accept your fault in things, you can correct it. You can't correct things that aren't your fault. So situation, same thing here, man. Like I'm not going to make excuses why I lost ever. I mean, I didn't win because I didn't do enough. I don't care. I mean, did it help that I had surgery? No, but I still could. I mean, that's still my fault.
Yeah. Yeah. No, that's true.
Yeah, I mean, it
That's
is, but
kind
I
of the
mean,
problem with the world today, man, is people are always making excuses about everything, and
agreed.
you
Yeah,
know,
that's what I mean. I
uh,
hate that, and you're not going to get better until you quit making excuses.
yeah,
Now, I mean, like to me, the main problem was just me being stupid and taking the fight. I understand I shouldn't have taken the fight. I in all reality, I know I should have. I didn't give myself the best opportunity to win that fight. I know that, but I mean,
yeah, because it didn't do
I
you any. It wouldn't have done you any good to beat him,
no,
because you were
no,
already so far
yep.
ahead, and
All it did was hurt me, and I understand that. But I mean, like I said, man, you got to understand the confidence level you have to have going out there as a fighter. You have to be delusional. You have to go out there and lose a fight horribly and think I'm going to win the next one, no problem. I mean, which is hard to do. If you're a smart guy, you got to be thinking, well, that guy beat me. Why can't the next guy? But you can't think like that. You have to think. You have to go out there and have a very short memory and think I'm going to kill this next guy within 1 round. And so, like I said, you have to have this mentality. At least, if I think to be the champ of the world, I should be able to beat anybody at any given time. I'm not afraid of anybody to fight anybody. I'll fight anybody there. So that was my mindset. Even though I wasn't 100%, I was like, I'm going to fight this guy anyway. I
yeah,
think I'm good enough. I should be able to beat him. But that's not. It's bad to have that as a mentality. A fighter should want to fight everybody. You need to have management and coaches that say, no, you're not doing
yeah.
that. And that's what should basically happen. Your management should be like, absolutely not. You're not doing this fight, Chris. But
And that's kind of a thing that, like, I see that happen a lot. A couple weeks ago, Gregory Rodriguez. He's been knocking everybody out in the UFC, and is on a real good win streak, and then he takes on a guy, who's a guy that jumped in on short notice, that has never fought in the UFC, and the guy doesn't have a whole lot of skills, but he's got a lot of power,
yeah,
and he knocked Gregory Rodriguez out, kind of that's going to
yep.
wreck his entire run that he was on, and he's probably never going to bounce back from it. Uh,
Man, there's this. It's rough because there's so much to risk and so little to gain. I mean, the smart management and smart people say we're not taking this fight. We're not doing it because there's nothing to gain for it. You know what I mean? But as a fighter, I don't think you should be picking and choosing. I think you should say, I want to fight everybody, and it's up to the management and the coach to be like, absolutely not. You know what I mean? So
you think that's kind of you think that's a deal where kind of managers are a little bit money hungry and greedy, or
either that or they're
You
not.
know?
They're either that or they're not smart. They don't get it, or here's what I don't like. Sometimes if you have a bigger management company, I'm a conspiracy theory guy, so I got the philosophy that if you got 20 guys in the UFC or 30, and the UFC's like, hey man, we need your guy to fight this, like, no man, I don't know, that doesn't help me out. Like, come on man, like, well, if I give you this guy to fight to set up for the title, then you got to help me get these two guys in the UFC and this.
Yeah.
There might be backdoor deals being made or other things based on your fight. You don't know. I mean, if I'm a manager, I care about my business more than one fight a lot of times. You'd have to think. So that might happen. They might sacrifice you to help three other guys out in their business, which is going to make them more money. I don't know. Or there could be lots of things like that. The UFC could just be paying them directly. I'm not really sure how. I mean, there's a ton of different ways it could work, I believe. When money's involved, nothing surprises me. So I don't know. Either that or like some managers aren't that good. Maybe they think, oh, we're going to beat this guy, no problem. You just don't. Fighting's a crazy sport. You just don't know what's going to happen.
Well, have you ever considered, or have you ever coached anybody,
I've coached, yeah. I've helped coach people, man. But I mean, um, it's if you want to be good at that, though, just like anything, it takes nothing but time, man. I mean, you got to be in there day in, day out. I would be in there some, but like I said, work on the fire department still full time and doing other. I just don't have the time to dedicate. I'm not willing to quit the fire department to coach people. Just like, and it's really tough now. I mean, if you got good talent, great talent. I mean, you're probably in California. You're in Florida, Southern Florida. You're in Texas. I don't know. There's a lot of like really mega camps. They're not in Indianapolis where I live, and I guess I could move down someplace. But once again, I don't want to. I don't know. I love what I'm doing right now. I'm pretty happy. So.
Yeah. So what was I going to say? Oh, what do you think about the whole James Krause situation? And yeah, are you familiar with him at all? Have you ever had any run-ins with him or?
I mean, I'm familiar with him. I don't. Here's the thing. Like, I'm not 100% sure exactly. I haven't heard the final word on what they're saying exactly he did. Now, I know they would say he was betting. Here's the thing. If he's betting against people that he knows are fighting and they have injury, I don't have a problem with that. That's just like I said, I've worked out with some people and they were fighting and said, I don't think this guy's probably going to win this fight. To me, that's not a problem. It's not a crime. Now, I heard what they were saying was he was encouraging fighters to fight who were injured so he could bet against them. Now, if that's the case, that's something totally different. I don't know if he did that. I mean, I haven't heard the final verdict on what really happened.
Yeah, I
If
don't
he
know.
just thinks that, okay, this guy's hurt, I'm going to bet against him, I don't have a problem with that. If he's encouraging people to fight who shouldn't, I have a problem with that.
Yeah.
What exactly is the final word? Do you know?
I don't think they've gotten a final word on it yet. I know he had like a Discord group or whatever of people that he gave betting advice to and everything. And
yeah,
supposedly before the Derek Minner fight, somebody leaked it. They don't know. I don't know if it was him or whatever, that his knee was blown out or whatever. And of course, right before the fight starts, all this money comes in on his opponent. So it's obvious somebody knew something somewhere.
yeah,
But I don't know. The part of me that really bothers me about the whole situation is that, like, he's got these guys underneath him, like Jeff Molina, and
yeah,
Jeff Molina is on a good little run right now, and
yeah.
they suspended Jeff Molina for sticking with his coach. I
That's
mean,
messed up, man. I
and,
mean, it's not his fault that's going on. I mean,
I
but man,
hope,
that Krause gym they had glory. They had like about 20 good guys from the UFC, and
yeah,
all of a
a lot
sudden,
of good
I mean,
guys.
his business is over. I mean, if they say if you're with him, you can't be in the UFC. Well, damn, I mean, that just makes everybody leave him, the gym. That's messed up, man.
Yeah, yeah. I mean, I would like to think that that whatever isn't what they say it is and all that, because I mean I do respect him as a coach and I respect
Yeah,
him as a fighter because he was a good fighter, and
yeah,
another guy that knew when to hang it up and went out
yeah,
on a win. And he's obviously a really good coach, but
yeah.
I just
Great, but I
wish,
mean, I would like to hear the final word on what they're saying. Like, you know, and here's a problem. He's got a gym with, like I said, 20 UFC fighters. How do we know he leaked that? I mean, the word could have got out so many different ways. How do we know that's on him? Or why? I don't understand. I mean, if they can prove he did something like illegal or immoral or unethical, let me hear it. But I mean,
Yeah.
that's from what I was hearing. That the theory at one point was that he was pushing people into fights so we could bet against him. If
Yeah.
he was doing that, I have a problem. If he wasn't doing that, I don't have a problem. I mean, like, what is he not supposed to bet because he thinks this guy's going to lose? I
Yeah.
mean, that people do that all the. I mean, the UFC got that the instant they can get all the information they want about fighters. Do you don't think they could bet against? I don't know. I just don't understand. They knew he was gambling. They knew he. I mean, he had like a podcast about gambling. I don't understand what the problem is. I mean, the only problem is he's trying to influence the direction of a fighter to make him fight when they're going to lose, and then bet against him. But if that's not being done, then what are we talking about here? In my opinion,
Yeah, I mean, he wasn't really breaking the rules. I mean, doing
no.
anything. I mean, so I just hope that in the end it turns out that he's like, I would just hate to think that he was the kind of guy that would put all these people's careers at risk. That he was coaching.
I
For
mean, I don't think he would. From what I've met, he doesn't seem like that type of guy. But I mean, like I said, I don't know what people do behind closed. I have no
I
idea.
wouldn't
So
think.
I can't. I don't want to
You know,
speculate either way and say he's guilty or say he's innocent. I have no idea.
yeah, I wouldn't think he would be that kind of guy. I mean,
Me neither.
it just seems like they're blowing it out of proportion. But so where were we? You looked probably the best you'd ever looked in the Dan Hardy fight, in your retirement fight. Um,
Thank you.
did you get, I guess you'd got your knee all healed up, and you had a really good camp and trained really hard, is what you're saying for that fight?
Man, I was just like, yeah. I mean, there's a little extra incentive when you're like, this is it. I'm not training. Like, I have to win this fight. This is it for me. And I want to like. It's rough. I knew I was going to be done, and you don't want to ever lose your last fight. And so I just like, man, I got to do whatever I can to. To be honest, like I said, I won 5 out of my last 6 fights. I felt like I was getting better as a fighter. I felt like I was learning more. I was just really on point and really starting to get my peak of my physical career. But like I said, just taking that time off with my knee, going to my kids' events, I've started feeling really guilty at the events. This I was like, go to my son's basketball game, and I was like, I never went to those things, and I was like, man, this is just what kind of a dad doesn't go to his kid's basketball games, and what kind of kid doesn't go to his daughter's gymnastics meet. I was just like, I started just feeling this immense guilt, and I was like, you look at the whole picture. I was thinking, man, I've been fighting since 1998. It's been 13 years, and all your whole kids' lives, all I do is knowing you being gone all the time. I was like, what are you doing, man? You should probably not do this. I mean, I was like 37 right around. I was like, man, it's been a good career. Just go out the way you want to. Don't start getting knocked out 5 times in a row and quit. Just go out at the right way. Spend time with your family and do the right thing. It's like, all right. So, but I was gonna train as hard as I could and win that last fight. I knew looking back to like this was gonna how I was gonna remember my career. Like it's all based on how it ends. If it ends in a good way, you can have good memories. If it ends in a bad way, you're gonna be bitter. Like 95% of the guys I know are bitter about their career.
Well, like I said, Dan Hardy was a pretty, accomplished striker. He had fought GSP already at that point, and went
Yeah.
5 rounds with GSP, and
Mhm.
you went out there and you outboxed him. And then whenever you got tired of doing that, I mean, he caught you with a few good punches, but once
Yeah.
you got tired of doing that, you submitted him and finished him.
Well, it wasn't even that. What kind of got me going into that fight? A lot of people are like, man, you need to take him down, Chris. He's a really good striker. He's done this and that. And I remember thinking, what am I? Am I you don't think I'm a good? I mean, I don't understand. What do you mean? I have to take him down? I don't take. I'm not mean. I have to take anybody down. You know what I mean? So that's when I was like, I'm gonna strike with this guy. And then what got me is like with about a minute left, he tried to take me down. That's when I was like, oh, and that's
Yeah,
when I got the submission. I never initiated the takedown. He shot it on me, and so I finished it. And that's what made me happy. Is like I was like, I was able to finish the fight because I mean the dude's tough. I landed some good shots on him, and he landed some good shots on me too. But I was just I felt like I outboxed him, and then he shot in, and I won by submission. So it was kind of a fight of the night, got the fight of the night and the sub of the night because I, main event, I subbed him in the last minute when kind of a desperation tip by him to win. And I just thought I couldn't ask for a better way to go out. It was like I said, I don't even like fights to end real quick. I do somewhat, they're fun, but I mean, you don't prove much to yourself. I like to fight. I had to dig deep. He rocked me a couple of times. I was able to, weather the storm and come back and just kind of land a lot of clean shots on him, hurt him a little bit, and then finish him my way. I thought it was pretty much the way I would have wrote it out if I wanted to write it out and how I hoped it would end.
So you're just a what if, what if after that fight, they had called you a month later and offered you a title fight? Would you have taken it?
That'd have been a tough decision. I'd probably have to say yes. I probably would have had to take that one, but
Yeah.
you know what? I don't like when people keep coming back, and I think, to be honest with you, I don't know they ever confirmed this with me, but I think, in a way, Dana and them like the fact that I would maybe be an example for other people. That I don't think they like the people they love, Matt Hughes, Chuck Liddell. I don't think they like them getting knocked out 4 fights in a row, them going to making them stop. I don't think they like that. I think they would like to see people go out on top, at their peak, doing well, not having mental problems. I think hopefully I can have other people see that and be like, man, yeah, that's what I want. I don't want to, as my coach would say, we're not going to drive this car till the wheels fall off. You know what I mean? We're not going to just run this in the ground, and that's not the way to go, because hopefully you have a long life ahead of you. And if you have problems with the rest of your life because of the sport, it's not a good ending, man. I mean, you better have made $100 million so you don't have to, because you're going to have a lot of problems and it's going to be a tough life. I feel like I mean, like I said, I came out of retirement and did some bare knuckle fights. I was still fine. I was still training all the time and feeling great in my 40s. I mean, I think I retired at the right time.
Yeah. Yeah. So, I mean, it was kind of like a happy, sad thing for me being a fan, because I
Yeah.
really always wanted to see you get that title fight, but I was also
Yeah.
happy to see you go out on a win.
Yeah.
And it's just, I don't know. I couldn't believe it. You retired whenever you did retire. It's kind of unexpected, but uh,
Yeah. Well, like I said, I know people are like, what the hell did he hand Dana? Handed him my retirement letter. It's like, I thanked him for the opportunity and for helping change my life and all that stuff. But I was like, man, I got 4 kids. I'm not being a good person. I didn't feel like I was being what I should have been being, man. You know what I mean? I mean, you got responsibilities, you got stuff. I talked to one guy and he was telling me how, there's such a fine line between, what you want to be successful for your kids so you can give them the better things. But at the same time, in order to be successful, then you have to be gone a lot and work hard. So, but you want to spend time with your kids too, to know them and teach them lessons. Like, how do you do both? That's a fine line you got to walk. We got to be trying to be successful to give them the finer things in life and give them opportunity, but at the same time being around them, and I wasn't doing a good job walking that line. I was too far to one side. So I was like, I got to correct that and go this other way, And I remember a guy telling me how he did the same thing. He was trying to be successful and he did all this stuff, and he did a good job being successful. And by that time, next thing you know, his daughter's in college. And he's like, you know what? I didn't even really know her, and she didn't know me. That broke my heart. I was like, man, that's going to be me. That's going to be me. I can tell. That's going to be me right here. So I was like, I ain't going to be me. I have a time. I'm never going to look back and think it was a mistake to stop. I will look back and think it was a mistake to keep going.
Yeah.
And not be home. So that's when I was like, all right, you got to do it, So I just made a decision, and it helped when I went to the gym that one day after they told me I was going to fight Dan Hardy. I didn't feel right, man. Because like I said, I had a few weeks off, a month to think about it, and I went to the gym and I was like, man, first time ever, it didn't feel right. First time I felt like I shouldn't be here, man. That never happened. I always felt like I should be there. So once that changed, it just changed, and it was an easy decision. There was no decision. I couldn't go the other way.
Yeah. So there were talks about, you getting into politics or whatever after that. I mean,
Yep.
what was going on with all that? What were you trying to do?
I ran for state senate here in Indiana. I'm just I despise politicians, the biggest, fakest liars in the world. And I've been paying attention to politics for a long time. And I was extremely libertarian minded. I believe in smaller government. I think these guys are crooks, and we got to take away their power. The only way to take away the power is not give them the power to sell to other people. So it's like, I mean, I'm gonna try and get in and help my state, and had a lot of plans for how I could help. And but then when I got involved and started trying to run, I realized, oh, they hate people like me. They will do everything to stop people like me from getting in there. And if you do get in there, they'll do everything they can to marginalize you and make you not effective. So I just being around those people, I realized I don't like any of those people, and I don't want to. You know, just I was a naive young person trying to get in and make a change when you can't make much of a change. And if you do, I mean, like one of my favorite guys was Ron Paul. Ron Paul, stood on principle the whole time, never passed a bill in his career.
Yeah.
Very ineffectual. And you think about it, I mean, he affected a lot of people like me and had, the Ron Paul revolution changed the way a lot of people saw things. But at the end of the day, I'm not willing to go in there for 25 years and beat my head against the wall and never accomplish anything. I'm not doing that. I mean, I'm doing things now. I started like an anti-bullet foundation after that to try and like affect some positive change and do some good things. But I mean, trying to go there and do it legislatively, good luck, man. I mean, I mean, it's past that. And unless you get 50 people like me in there to win something, that's just not going to happen. It's not reality. I mean, money is going to always control, and the people who make the laws are the people. They're not going to go against what benefits them. It's just not going to happen.
Yeah, yeah. It's
It's
funny how
naive to think anything different.
it's like everybody always make all these promises and stuff when they're running for office and everything, and then ultimately in the end, somebody's always got to answer to somebody, and nothing ever changes. So it's even the president, he's got to answer to somebody. I mean,
Yeah, I mean, people think they're in charge. They're not. They're not in charge. I mean, there's, and I'm sure things are different on the inside than they are on the outside looking. And you think, why don't you just do this? Why don't you do that? Well, it's not quite the way it is in there. It's not reality. And at the end of the day, there's a lot bigger factors in there, and then they're not going to go in there and do what's best for you and me. They're doing what's best for them.
yeah. So after when did BKFC get in touch with you, and how did all that come about? And
Well, to be honest with you, I fought bare knuckle before BKFC. I fought over in England. I one day I'm in the gym. I used to go to the gym all the time. But it was cool because at some point I started doing a thing where, you know, when my kids would go to school, I started like before, like my gym, it was always 4:30 we'd have practice. Well, now I started going in at like 8 9 o'clock in the morning. So it's like my kids will go to school at 8. I go to the gym early. As the sport continued to grow, more people got involved. So then we have earlier classes. So now I can go to the gym early and didn't have to miss out on kid time. So I started going to the gym early. Okay, this is cool. And as probably 40, and still at the gym. And then I don't know, a few years later, somebody comes to the gym like, hey man, look at this. I see your buddy Joe Riggs. He did a bare knuckle fight over in London. I said, what the hell's wrong with him, man? I said, you did a bare knuckle fight? And so he said, yeah, he had it on Facebook. So I look at his phone, I'm watching it, and I was like, this dude's, I thought there'd be like bales of hay and like maybe cars, like some guys smoking cigars and just like, I don't know. So I watched it and I was like, oh, it's like a legit fight in a boxing ring. And I was like, okay, this bare knuckle is way more technical than I thought. This is different. So about halfway through the fight, I started looking and I talked to the guys like, man, I wonder how do I get a hold of these people to do those things, And he's like, what do you mean? I was like, who do I talk to get in this bare knuckle thing? I want to try one. And so he helped me track him down, and eventually I got a hold of him, and they had me come out to London and do a bare knuckle fight. I'm like, man, I had to try it. As looking at it, it reminded me of a throwback to 1999 or something. It reminded me of MMA back then, just very raw, old school, and like just like a forbidden thing. Like, oh my god, what do you do? Like, as cage fighting, that's what cage fighting or NHB was like that back then. By this time, it was normal and mainstream, so you didn't get that same edgy feeling that you did before. That something in your stomach, like, man, this is crazy. So I wanted to gab that again, so I tried it. Went over to England, did one fight for me, BKB. And I was like, okay, I did it. Probably about 3 or 4 months later, Nate Shook, the BKFC got a hold of, BKFC got a hold of me and asked me to fight. I was like, hell yeah, man. I love what you guys are doing. I would like to do it. And he told me the date, for BKFC 1 was June 2nd. I was like, man, my daughter's wedding is June 2nd. I can't do that day. He's like, ah. He's like, well, we're going to do another one after that. I said, man, I promise I'll do the next one. So then I fought on BKFC 2. And I love the organization. I was like, man, I like the rules here. I like this way better. I said, I want to but at this time I was like 44, I think. I was like, man, I want to get involved in some commentary because I've done commentary a little bit here and there, but I like to get involved. So I did comment. I did like a little bit of like the cornerman kind of commentary for the kind of like the Dean Thomas does for um, BKFC 3, and then I fought in BKFC 4, and then I did more of the commentary again for BKFC 5, and then I just started doing the commentary the full time.
Yeah, I was pretty excited, man. Whenever I mean, I saw that you were on there. I was like, oh man, I got to check this out. And then I saw Leben was on there, and to see you win your fights and everything, it was real cool, you know. Um, so what what was the pay like for BKFC? Are they pretty good? You know, I mean,
It's gotten better, man. Like it was a brand new sport. They didn't have a ton of money, so I was just like, I didn't get paid great, but I was just like, man, I'll do this. But like I said, the whole time I was like, man, I want to. I felt like I was in a unique position. I don't know if anybody else at that point who fought UFC 20 times and had 15 pro boxing matches and had done some bare knuckle fights. So I was like, I feel like I'm uniquely qualified to do commentary for this. So my goal was really just to get in there, get a few fights for them, and then just to transition over the commentary team. It's like I said, I was like 45 my last fight or something. Like man, back to what I said before. I don't want to keep fighting too much. Like I always feel like I could keep fighting. I still did want to have another fight. I kicked the idea around for a while. My coach was like, dude, you're not doing it, man. I'm not letting you do this stuff. I don't want you to have problems. Like you're right. You're right. You know what I mean? So um, I just felt like I love the organization. I love the sport. Like I said, the thing I love about the sport in many ways is you're not going to have the brain damage from that. Like that's one of the reasons talking to the wife. She's like, I came out of retirement for it because I was like, man, you understand when you train in this, you don't, the sparring rounds aren't the same. Like you can't trade punches in this sport. You have to get in, out, movement, because you get hit, you get cut open, the fight's over. So you have to train different. So you probably take a third to maybe a fourth of the punches that you do in a boxing match, I would say. And, I tried to bring this up to somebody the other day. I was like, they're like, no, you hit harder with a bare fist than you do with a boxing glove. I said, okay, put a punch meter on that brick wall and hit that brick wall. If I give you $1,000, hit that wall hard, with a bare fist. Like, okay. Now put a boxing glove on and hit that brick wall. Which one do you think you're going to throw a harder punch with? Well, with the boxing glove, you throw a lot harder. You know what I mean? So they're like, yeah, that's true. See, I mean, I guarantee people get hit harder with. I mean, you're going to get hit harder with boxing gloves, and you're going to get hit a lot more often. So it's that brain hitting the skull that gives you your brain damage. You know what I mean? So if you're getting hit that many more times in a fight and in training, all that adds up, that messes you up. And I thought that's why I like bare knuckle. I don't think you're going to get that, especially with older fighters. The bare knuckle to me is great because, if you have a guy who's been training MMA for 10, 12 years, you understand like the hard part that is the grind of the training camp, the wrestling, the jujitsu, the box, everything. And your back hurts, your shoulders, it's doing all that stuff. Bare knuckle, you don't do any of that stuff. You go in there, you throw these two things. All you have to do, it's so much easier on your body to train for. So if you have guys who've been training MMA for 10 years and they want to transition out and be like, man, I'll go do bare knuckle. It's easier on my body. It's going to extend my career for 5 years. I want that to be an option, and them not to take the brain damage. It's crazy that some states still don't have us legal.
yeah, yeah. I'm cool with the UFC fighters going over there as long as they haven't had, as long as they're not already too far gone. I mean, you have been can still hold up. Not after they've been knocked out, 6 times in a row and then want to go do BKFC. That's not going to get any better for them.
No, exactly, man. I don't want that for any. I don't think anybody should be doing that. But like I said, if they are going to do anything, I'd rather it be bare knuckle than boxing, or boxing to be the worst, or maybe be bad too. Like, but boxing would be the worst because then you're gonna eat a lot of punches. Those gloves make it where you might not get knocked out as quick, and your brain is gonna hit the source. It's gonna cause a lot of problems, man. I mean, I love boxing, trust me, and I still like sparring and doing stuff. But I go with smart people, go light, don't go hard. It's not a good thing to get rocked a lot, man. So that's why I love the bare knuckle. You're gonna get cut more, but I don't think you're gonna have the brain damage. So I just want that to continue growing to be an option for fighters who want to do it. I mean, I think it's so entertaining too. I mean,
Yeah.
man, that last fight we just put on, in Myrtle Beach, Scoggins versus Richardson. If you guys haven't watched that one, that was a legit fight. Those guys, Scoggins fought in the UFC like 7 times or something. Richardson fought in Bellator, but those guys beat the brakes. That was a great fight, man. So much fun to watch. They came forward the whole time and put on a show. I don't know if you've watched that one yet, but if you haven't, it was good.
Yeah, I'll check it out. I haven't seen that one
Yeah.
yet. Um, so uh, Hector Lombard, is he still? Is he had a belt, didn't he?
Yeah, he lost it. He lost a decision to Lorenzo Hunt. Lorenzo Hunt's been pretty phenomenal for us. He's getting ready to fight Mike Richmond. Both those guys are champs. They're both going to fight in Knucklemania here in 2 weeks. That's what the same card Diego Sanchez is on, and Greg Hardy, John Dodson. I mean, great card. It's going to be one of our best cards here. Phenomenal card, man. I cannot believe how good this thing's turned out to be.
Yeah, John Dotson really surprises me, man, because he's still winning fights and everything, and I tracked him down finally. Like he was fighting for that ex MMA or whatever,
Yeah,
which is an organization that I had never heard of, and then I was like, man, they actually have some pretty good fighters fighting with them
they
because
do.
they had Impa Kastanganai, and they had John Dotson, they had Jared Gooden, whole bunch of people, that
They've had. I did one of their fights, the first one they put back in a long time. And they had some great fighters on there, man. They definitely do. It was there's a lot of good organizations out there, man. But John Dodson, yeah, he looked phenomenal his first fight. I mean, just the way he fought that Benoit right there, UFC veteran, like 9-time, 7-time UFC veteran, and just walk through him in 45 seconds or something. Just
yeah,
fast, accurate. He's gonna be a problem for everybody.
yeah. So you think you guys might be able to get Ngannou over there or what?
I don't think so, man. I mean, I'm sure they're going to try and talk to him and see what he wants, but I'm sure it's going to be too much. One thing is, the guy who said for some of the things he said, the reasons he left the UFC. I mean, I know talk to Dave Feldman who runs BKFC. I know he is trying to set up like a pension program for the fighters who fight in BKFC, which would be unbelievable.
Yeah,
I mean, to me, like I always felt bad. You got fighters who fought in the UFC who helped build the UFC. Guys like Mark Coleman. And I'm like, man, that guy should be getting something from it. I remember seeing him fight like even later in his career when I was fighting, sitting next to him, was like talking to him about stuff. Like, well, I didn't have any money to do this. I'm thinking, man, you should have this isn't right. So I'm like, in the NFL, if you play for 4 seasons, you get some form of a pension. So I'm like, all right, fighters fight 3 times a year. If you fight 12 times in the UFC, you should get some kind of something. I don't care if it's $2,000 a month. Give them something where they don't have to give them something. You know what I mean? They could have taken when they sold for over $4 billion. You could have taken $100 million, put it in some trust or some annuity, make sure whatever fighters reach some threshold, you got something. You know what I mean? I think that'd be fair to do for people, and there's nothing like that. So if Dave Feldman can get up there and give some kind of pension fund foundation to get some of these fighters some money, like I said, and I understand people think you fight there once. No, you have to fight there a certain number of times to get it. Just like NFL, just like the NBA, just like anything. Once you get vested, I think there should be something, man.
yeah, yeah. I'm definitely with that, and I already know your opinion on the fighter pay and stuff like that, which didn't surprise me because I was like, there's like two ways you could look at it. You could either look at it as, oh, they got it better than I had it back then, or you could still think they deserve more, and you're basically you're both of those, so
Yeah,
it's
man. I mean, here's the thing, I understand now being working for BKFC, we had people earlier who were like wanting unrealistic amounts of money. And I'm like, man, you got to understand they don't have the money. And I remember at one point I watched some thing with Dan and them talking about how when I told you when I was fighting Robbie Law and those guys, I was making 2 and 2, 2000. And I'm like, I need more money, I need more money. And then come to find out they're about 40 million in debt at the time. So
Yeah.
it's like, how do you pay me more money when you're 40 million in debt? So you got to look at things from both sides. You're like, I can't afford to pay you more. Like, what was really neat, you had, Affliction, and Affliction came out and they put on 2 fights and they're like, we're going to pay fighters what they deserve. And they did. And they put on 2 fights and went bankrupt.
Yeah.
You can't pay people 800 grand who don't bring $800 worth of people. Why? It doesn't make any sense. It'd be great if you could, but I mean, it has to make financial sense for both sides. You know what I mean? And if me, like right now, if I went to BKFC and like, yeah, man, I need 50 grand every time I do commentary. Even if they said okay, that'd be great until they go out of business in 6 months, and then I don't get anything. It's like, well, what are you doing? You have to be realistic and understand. You can't put people out of business. Everybody's got to make money, and if the money's not quite there, you can't ask for 100 grand a fight. It's just not going to happen. You know what I mean? So I don't know. I see both sides of it a little bit better now. Fighters' jobs always want more. It's always an under management's job. Be like, we have to keep the lights on. We have to make the sport grow, and we have to make money ourselves. So you got to walk. I mean, there's a fine line there. It's difficult to balance.
Yeah. And you made a real good point on your show whenever because you were saying that the UFC, the way they get away with, without, the benefits and everything is that, well, you're not an employee,
Yeah,
and you said, you gave a lot of good reasons why you should be considered an employee. I don't know if you
yeah,
remember that,
yeah. I'm like,
but
yeah, well, I have to wear this uniform. I have to tell you where I'm at for USADA. I can't do this. I can't. There's a lot of different things. It sounds like an employee to me. You know what I mean? Independent contractor. No, there's a lot of things I can do as an independent contractor. You can't cherry pick and say, well, you're an independent contractor here, but you have to do the A, B, and C. Well, no, that sounds more like an employee to me. Tell me what it is. Is it this way or is it this way? And you can't cherry pick and take the good parts out of both. Then that's what's being done because nobody's challenging them on it right now. You know what I mean? So yeah, I mean you can, but when push comes to shove, I think they're going to say that's not right. Which is it? Are they an independent contract? Then they get to do these things. Are they employee? Then they get to do these things. But you can't cherry pick and take the best out of both worlds.
yeah. Yeah, it's definitely ridiculous that they don't allow anybody to do anything. I mean, because these guys could be making 3 or 4 times the amount of money that they're making now if they had the opportunities to go do, other things, and they're not
Yeah,
allowed to do it. And I just hate seeing, I hate seeing like Bigfoot Silva. He just finally retired. And
yeah.
he was on like a what like a 15 fight losing streak or something.
Getting knocked out all the time, man. He's gonna have problems. You know what I
and
mean?
and I hate to I would like to, well, I guess wouldn't like to think of it either way, but I don't know if it was a case to where he just didn't want to stop, or it was just a case where he needed the money and had to keep going,
Yeah.
or I mean, I just hate that.
Me too. That's what I mean. That's why I love to say, hey man, you helped build this. Here's
He deserves
something. Like I said, the NFL is a pension fund. Why don't we have some kind of pension fund? I mean, they once they sold for 4.2 billion or whatever, I was like, okay, yeah, you can do a little something now to help out.
Yeah,
Before early. I mean, that's what else kills me when the UFC talks about like, oh, we do this and this like for safety and we do all this stuff. I'm like, that wasn't the case back when you guys were 40 million in debt. You guys didn't do all that stuff, or even when you first started making money. This is a now that you guys sold for 4 billion. Yeah, now you do all this stuff for safety. But before, I mean, I remember it was funny after every UFC, the number of fighters who'd end up at the hospital. And there'd be a fighter who his fight might have lasted 45 seconds. And all of a sudden he's like, yeah, I hurt my back, my knee hurts, and my hand. I'm like, dude, you're you're showing up here because every fight injury you had in training camp, you come to get looked at now because you couldn't get look at it before because you don't have insurance. So everybody, like the hospitals, will be full of people, no matter what, just to get looked at for injuries they sustained during camp.
yeah,
That's because that was the only time they could go to the hospital. So they took advantage of that, but they had to. You know what I mean? So it's just funny seeing how now they act like, oh no, we try and take care of our fathers. But yeah, but you didn't when you didn't have money. You know what I mean?
yeah,
Now that you're worth all this money, you're going to try to take care of these guys. Now, what about the guys back in the past who got messed up who you still won't take care of? You know what I mean?
yeah. Yeah, so back then the UFC did they actually cover hospital expenses and stuff for
Yeah,
fighters or
the night of the fight. Like
yeah,
if you went to, yeah, they cover them, but that's what I mean. If you were, if it was leading up to the fight, they wouldn't cover me. You had no problem. But I mean, that's why you didn't go to the hospital until after the fight. Then you'd be like, oh yeah, my knee hurts. Well, looks like you hurt this 6 weeks. Well, no, I hurt in the fight. Okay, so everybody would go to get all their injuries taken care of that they had during the fight camp, and they do it after the fight.
yeah. Was USADA like a big deal back,
It,
when you were
didn't exist. I didn't have to
yeah,
do any USADA. I
never?
mean, no. I mean, you would do a drug test, maybe random drug test before the fight or after the fight or something, but before the fight thing. But it wasn't everybody. It was just randomly. I mean, dude, they didn't test for hardly anything I knew. I mean, like, obviously, look at me. I was not a steroid guy, but I mean, I remember hearing of I'm talking to somebody. I said, "Man, I bet half the people, in the UFC right now are taking growth hormone." They're like, "Nah, it's probably 75%." I was like, "Really?" Like I didn't. They said, "Oh yeah." I thought, "Wow, I didn't know that." And I mean, I think people were taking all kinds of stuff. I don't know. It just wasn't. USADA wasn't even around back then.
Yeah. Well, you could definitely tell that whenever, USADA came around, a lot of people's,
Performance went.
yeah, it went way downhill,
Yeah,
and that was
yeah.
something that GSP talked about in an interview that like when he fought uh Johnny Hendricks, and he's like that guy, he hits like a truck, but he could tell. He's like, I could tell that that he was probably using steroids or whatever, and then whenever the whole USADA thing came around, Johnny Hendricks is
Done.
he went downhill, and so I understand it now. It makes sense, and it's crazy that GSP was so good. You'd wonder if he ever did anything like that, and he didn't. But he was definitely not a cheater.
Yeah.
So just a couple more things, man. I wanted to ask you about Stephen Bonner.
Well,
If you knew him very well, and if you had any stories or anything, and anything like that.
not really any good stories about Stefan, man. I know he's from northern Indiana. I'm from the central part, so I knew who he was. Just definitely a wild man. Liked him a lot. He was always positive, always fun to be around, always a good time. But yeah, just like I said, man, this fight business is crazy, and I don't know a lot of people who end up having just great positive memories of it, and it can affect many parts of their lives. I'm not sure exactly. He just seems like he was in a kind of a different place there towards the end. But I was shocked to hear how he passed. But like I said, just disheartening hearing. This is gonna sound weird, but man, I know I've met some dirt bags, and I feel like the dirt bags always live for a long time. How's come good people die young? You know what I mean? How's come the good people I like? Can't it be one of those dirt bags who I don't like? Can't they
Yeah,
just catch some prop? But that sounds mean, but whatever.
yeah.
Somebody's got to die younger. I'd rather be somebody I don't like. But man, he was a good guy, man. Always a good guy.
Well, speaking of dirt bags, you want to talk about Phil Baroni?
I got a funny one for you, man. So when I fight Robbie Lawler, so I'm in my locker room there. I get there, and all of a sudden the door like boom gets kicked in. I look, and some dude walks in with like a big ghetto blaster, boom, boom, and then like four guys walk in, like Phil Baroni walks in. I'm like, what is this, man? And like the people came in, hey, you can only have two quarters. I'm like, no, I got this pass. Get it to all these two guys, and so like, all right, whatever. And I'm just thinking, I don't really know this guy, but he he just had the New York badass, stared on all sorts of like, I. So I go and I fight Robbie Lowell. I come back and he goes out. And he fights Evan Tanner. I don't remember that fight, but he's beating the brakes off Tanner, and then Tanner gets him down and starts elbowing him. They end up stopping the fight. He's all mad. He like grabs the ref and everything. And so I hurt my ankle when I fight Robbie. Like kicked and pushed my leg back. So I'm kind of over there ice, and I'm just kind of sitting in the locker room. My ankle's kind of hurting. I'm just sitting there. And Phil comes back there, and after a few minutes, he's kind of pissed. He kind of walks up to me. He's like, "Hey, man, Just want to let you know, I thought you looked fantastic that fight, and you did a great job. I was like, all right, he was super cool to me. And every time I'd see him after that, he was nothing but nice to me. You know what I mean? So I don't know what it was, but that guy was always he was always cool to me, always liked me, and like I can always say the Diaz, both of the Diaz brothers, man, every time I'd see them, they were always super cool to me. So I know people who've had a lot of problems with some of these other guys, they seem to like me for some reason. I don't know what it is. So I think he liked me, but yeah, just seeing that apparently he beat that girl to death, and that's really. I'm waiting to judge till I see what happened. If that really happened, that's messed up. I mean, like I said, not a lot of people get out of this sport mentally right. I don't know. I don't know what it is about it. Just expectations of how you want your life to go, and if they don't meet that expectation, it's tough to deal with. I mean, this takes a lot of focus and mental preparation and mental, goals. You have to keep that eye on the prize the whole time. And when you try to attain this right here forever and you work towards it, if you don't get what you want, I think it's just a problem for you, man. I think you always have this dissatisfaction. Like for me, luckily, I've been able to like transition. Now I have new goals. I have new things I'm always trying to do. You know what I mean? So if you can't redirect those goals, it's going to be a problem. And I don't know if that's what happened to him. I'm just speculating here, but man, I just noticed a lot of people get out of the sport. It's not good.
Yeah. Yeah. I don't know. I kind of had the feeling maybe, steroid use maybe could have played a factor and whatever happened. And I mean, it sucks to think that all that stuff's true, that
it could be steroids. It could also be, you got to think, I mean, if you get some brain damage, you get knocked out or some shots, you don't know what that's doing in your brain and what like thing that's pushing on. Maybe it's your anger portion of your brain. I don't know. Maybe there's swelling in certain areas. It affects people differently, and like some people freak out and get mad at it. It could be steroids. There's a ton of things. I don't know. I have no idea.
yeah. And that's pretty much all I had for you. Who are your picks on the next BKFC?
Well, unfortunately, being the commentator, I'm probably not supposed to say. I can probably talk to you off there. I'll tell you what I think, but I'm going to put it out there because, even for I don't know for betting purposes, but yeah, I got those other fighters. I don't want to be. I got to remain neutral. I got to be like Sweden or Switzerland, and yeah, I got to be Switzerland here. Just try to be good and neutral to everything.
I get it. I understand.
I'm not a betting guy here, so I got to be good and just, I'm with the I'm trying to be professional here, not pick sides.
Yeah. Yeah, it's just I mean that's just kind of like my way of trying to be involved with the sport, I mean,
Yeah.
my
No, I get it, man.
stuff and uh I like to think I do a pretty good job, but
Yeah.
so are you allowed to speculate on the UFC fights then?
Sure, I can do that all day long, man. I got nothing to do with those guys. Yeah.
You think Volkanovski's got anything for Makachev?
Volkanovski's been I mean for sure. I mean, I don't think he's never lost, and he's just kind of beat everybody. He's never really been dominated and on the ground or his family. I don't see how he can count him out of any fight. I mean, like I've said before, I don't think they talk about, he's not as big. They do used to play rugby at like over 200 pounds.
He's pretty big.
He can get bigger. I mean, he's going to be, if he wants to get up for that weight class, he'll be fine. He's ready to fight anybody. No, I don't think anybody's right now. It's just funny how you go in these waves. I remember you look at early UFC, like jiu-jitsu was this and jiu-jitsu was that. And then I remember when Mark Coleman and those guys came out and Mark Kerr, I remember at one point asking somebody, I said, who in the world's ever going to beat Mark Kerr? I mean, how could you beat this guy? I remember thinking that. And that was, he used to, of course he got beat, I mean, then they figured out, how to beat Mark Coleman, but like I said, it goes in waves right now, and different things are great. Different things right now, where this part, these Uzbekistan or Russian or whatever Kazakhstan, these Dagestanian or whoever these Eastern Bloc Russian guys are just dominating right now. They'll get figured out eventually. I mean, it will happen. You know what I mean? It hasn't happened yet, but I mean it's not going to go on forever. I think Volkanovski definitely has a chance. I'm not saying he'll beat him, but to me, him being a 3-1 underdog is crazy.
Yeah, that is crazy. And it's crazy how all those guys are all undefeated pretty much. Well, I guess Islam Makhachev does have one loss on his record. Uh,
Yeah.
but like Umar Nurmagomedov
Yeah.
and all them, and I mean that's crazy. And I couldn't
They're
believe
tough as nails. Yeah.
Umar knocked out Ronnie Barcelos in his last fight.
And that weird. It's like you just things you wouldn't think it happened. But man, it's MMA, anything can happen.
And I noticed lately that it's like the judges have been kind of changing up a lot. Like how you were talking about in your fight with Matt Serra. Like you were doing all the damage you felt like, and they were
But
giving him,
all the damage, but it wasn't much.
yeah,
It was very little damage.
yeah. But I
I don't
mean,
want to make it sound like I was doing. I don't want it to sound like I was dominating. Nobody was dominating that fight. It was a pretty boring fight. But I thought, like I said, on a scale of 1 to 10, I was doing 1 and he was doing 0. So I
yeah,
thought I was winning, but I wasn't. I wasn't dominating by any means. So I wanted it to sound like I think I was killing the guy. Not the case.
yeah. I don't know. I've just noticed that they've kind of switched it up here, especially like this last like year or so, because used to they would give like all the credit, to the people who were controlling, like up against the cage or
Yeah.
the ground. But now, they're actually giving people rounds that, have been on bottom but actually done more damage or been up against the cage and landed the better
I think
shots.
I think that's one of the big pushes they're trying to say, when they had the, I know they have rules and regulation meeting. They always try and talk about, what direction are we going in here? And damage is supposed to be the number one deterrent. It's supposed to be more than control, but that's not how they've been pushing it. So I think they're really trying to make a point. Hey, damage is number one. What are we doing? This doesn't look like what we're doing here. So they're really trying to enforce the rules and make them more prevalent with the judges. So I think they're really putting that on the judges. Hey, man, you got to, the number one criteria is damage, not control.
Yeah. And what about Jones and Cyril Gahn? What do you think about that?
And I mean, kind of a question mark. We don't know what Jones is really going to be like at heavyweight. I mean, I don't think Gong's Cyril's on the top 3 or 4 heavyweight. So it's kind of weird to me that
Yeah.
that's the matchup. But I mean, I guess Nagano's out, and Stipe's not there right now, and Curtis Blades. I don't think they want that fight. You know what I mean? So it's just there's a couple other guys, that I could see them putting in before they put Cyril Gong in there. But I mean,
Yeah.
I don't know. I think John Jones has a lot of ways to win that fight. You look at a guy who got taken down and dominated by Francis Ngannou.
Exactly. Yeah.
So,
That's my
good
thoughts on
luck.
it. I just curious to see if Jones's cardio is going to hold up, with all the extra weight on him. And I haven't even really seen him yet, like what he actually
Yeah,
looks like at heavyweight or what he's
yeah.
weighing or anything. So
I thought it was like 242 last time I heard of something. I don't know.
yeah, he definitely has a wrestling advantage there. But
Yeah. Yeah.
just crazy because it's hard for me to take it serious, because there's been 3 years of, oh, he's coming back, he's coming back, he's coming back. And until he
Yeah.
gets in there, I'm not going to believe he's coming back. So,
Yeah.
but, and I guess that's all I got for you, man. Anything else you want to talk about?
No, man, just anybody who's interested in watching good entertaining fights, man, BKFC is the way to go.
Yeah.
Very, very cheap, like $7 a month, $7.99 a month. And man, I mean, 2-minute rounds. They come to fight, and the thing I like about it is MMA, boxing, all that. At some point you get these high level fights. It's a fight, but it's more like an athletic contest. I'm going to outpoint. I'm going to win. Bare knuckles still a fight. It's not it's a fight, and that's what the UFC used to have. It was just a raw fight, and it's not anymore. It's very athletic. You got great athletes. They're too highly skilled, I think, sometimes, but bare knuckles still a fight. So if you want to watch people come down and fight, 2-minute rounds, fast pace, start 3 feet away. It's awesome. If you want to, please watch and listen to some great comments.
Yeah, I might need to start doing some betting videos on BKFC and stuff. And it's pretty time consuming. Like I didn't ever think I could get burnt out watching fights, but
Yeah,
like a 15
doing
fight,
research is tough, man. I mean,
like
you got
you're
to do the research.
watching 30 30 fighters, you know, and you know,
Yeah,
watching 2 or 3 of their fights apiece, you're just brain dead by the
I know,
end
man.
of the
It's
day.
it's it's not easy.
But all right, man, I appreciate it, dude. Thank you
Yeah,
for doing this, and yeah, you're one of my favorite fighters ever, and I was shocked that you answered me, and I appreciate it.
and no, of course, man. Thanks for watching. I always tell people if you want to get a hold of me on Instagram, I'll get back with you.
Cool. Well, thanks, man. I appreciate it.
All right, have a good one. Bye.